Hey everyone, my name is Clyde, and in today's video we're going to talk about every single steel ship that you can buy in World of Warships. Joining me on voice is Skada, so shoutouts to him for helping out with this discussion, and of course all of the people who participated during the live stream on December 1st when we recorded this. So thanks so much for watching this video. I hope that you find it enjoyable. To make it a little easier for you to navigate, I have bookmarked every single discussion of every single ship so you can skip around to the parts that you like, or maybe send it to a friend and let them know, hey, watch this part, it's about the Bourgogne, or maybe whatever ship you're interested in or they're interested in, to make that easier to share. Without further ado, let's get to talking about steel ships. All right, guys, well, welcome to this episode of It's a Ship Show. I'm here with my sidekick, Skada, in the studio, and today we're going to talk about steel ships. Skada, say hello to the people at YouTube.
Hello.
All right. Considering, I'm going to consider that our introduction's made. What I wanted to do kind of to start off our steel ship conversation is talk a little bit about some of these steel ship metrics, or basically just the numbers about what we've got in the game right now for steel ships. So I went and collected a bunch of information and data, and you can see that. I guess it's over this direction, right over here. I put up together a little poster. At present, this isn't every steel ship that you could ever have earned in World of Warships, but right now, if you go to the armory, there are 9 tier 10 ships and 1 tier 9 ship available. We've got 1 aircraft carrier and 1 destroyer available, with 1 more coming in soon. And we've got 4 battleships and 4 cruisers. I added up the total cost of all of the steel. If you had none of these ships and you needed to buy these ships, right now you would need 290,000 steel. If you used a coupon on every single ship, it would cost you 217,500 steel. Anyway, the total cost of all these ships is 290,000 steel, and with a coupon comes to just over 217K. So that's what we've got right there. For aircraft carrier mains, for destroyer mains, there's not a lot of steel ships available. Battleships and cruisers, we've got 4 and 4, and I kind of wonder sometimes, Scott, if that's just because that's about what they think people play most of. If they build, if they're trying to fill out the ranks based on player population. I feel like there'd be more destroyer mains than that, though.
Yeah. I don't know what drives the
decisions,
the mind of them in regards to when ships go in for steel or ships go in for other resources. So I think I'm not surprised there's 4 battleships, because I feel like a lot of people are battleship players. I am kind of surprised there's 4 cruisers, and some of those cruisers are getting kind of long in the tooth, right? So well, maybe at least one of them. So and I myself have noted the lack of steel destroyers.
Yeah. I was always, every time they come, they're like, we're thinking about releasing a new steel ship, or whenever a steel ship comes out and it's not a destroyer, I'm like, seriously, man? Although I did have to eat my words when we did the Colt discussion last month. There were more destroyers in there than I thought. So, steel might be lacking some destroyers, but there are plenty of Colt destroyers available for sure. Snow says Wargaming doesn't care about DD mains. Just look at how XP works. I don't know if that's true or not, but they do have some thoughts there that don't always resonate with us as players, do they? Or don't they? Okay, well, without really dilly-dallying too much, more than we already have, we're going to roll through and talk about all of the ships. We'll start off with battleships, we're going to do cruisers, and then we'll do destroyers and CVs together just because they all fit on one page. And we will talk a little bit about Z-42, the upcoming steel destroyer that is going to join the German nation in World Warships as well. So we'll do a little bit of speculation there based on what we've seen, or at least about we'll talk about the published data that's available there. We can't speculate too much, but so let's jump into battleships. First off, there are 4 battleships. Now, one thing that sometimes people are a little surprised by is that I don't have all of these ships. It's true. In fact, in the battleship category is where I have the fewest, but luckily Skada has a lot of these ships, and so between the two of us, we've got games in these boats. The only one I have here is Bourgogne, and it's a relatively recent ad. I just spent my coupon on this recently. So I think what I'll do maybe, Skada, is I'll throw it to you to pick a ship first and get us started. And if you wanted to pick Bourgogne, that's fine too. We can kind of start anywhere on the board.
Why don't we? Or what do you think? We'll talk about Bourgogne last, because you have Bourgogne as well, right?
Yeah,
so
okay.
Let's just start in the top corner with Shikishima. Shikishima, off the top of my head, I don't have the release date here, but I feel like it's been in game for a year and a half, 2 years now. I feel like it's been around for quite a while. and
I
it
think
is
it's quite
a
two, but yeah, it's been for a bit. That's for sure.
it's a Yamato with, instead of 9 460s, it's got 6 5 somethings, 510s. So it's a Yamato hull, and it's replaced 9 guns with 6 guns that are bigger, and it has different secondary loadout. It has like Kitakaze or Haragumo style, like 100 millimeter Japanese secondary turrets all over. So when it first came out, it's been out long enough that I remember it was more the captain rework. Back then, you could as a meme like build for secondaries on this thing with the old manual secondary style, and it was kind of fun. Less useful in post captain change and with secondary accuracy nerfs and things.
Yeah,
I don't think that's a way that people meme with this ship now. So yeah, it's been out for a little while. I don't feel like we see a lot of them anymore in randoms. I tend to think that's because of Satsuma, the tier 11 Japanese super battleship that has these guns but has 8 of them and can be purchased for silver. And has the special combat instructions that make the guns deadly accurate, right? And so I think that's one reason why maybe you don't see this one. I don't know. I wish we had an idea. I wish Wargaming would share things like the popularity of these. Like, we can go look at the stats and see like matches played and things like that. And it's always kind of interesting when you look at a premium ship and you see, well, that one's been out for a year and it's only got 40,000 matches on NA, but something that's been out for 6 months has 100,000. So that gives you an idea.
yeah.
And I don't know where the number of matches on Shikishima, but this ship is. It always feels bad to me. I don't like 6-gun battleships, and yet I bought this thing, and it's not the only 6-gun battleship that's for sale for steel. And it's I generally find 6-gun battleships to be frustrating because of the dispersion problems, right? Where you just less shells downfield, less likely to get as many hits as you need.
Right.
Shikishimas can be fun though, and you can overmatch like everything with those guns, so, and that's kind of fun too. But I generally think that your Yamato stands don't think that this ship is better, and they're probably right.
Well, and that's one of the things.
Kind of a weird side grade.
Those 460s pen a lot of things in the game, right? Most things in the game at a lot of angles, and that ship can let you spend your steel on something else, right? And I've heard folks use that logic in the past before. Like, I could get Shiki, but I already have Yamato, so I'm going to get something that's different, right? Whereas this doesn't seem to bring much that's particularly special to the table that Yamato doesn't already do good enough, right? Or well enough, if you will,
Yeah.
Um,
I just really think that especially now with the existence of the super ship Satsuma, that this ship is just kind of obsoleted, and it doesn't do. I've played it in clans, but that's more for like a joke more than anything. You're probably better off playing Yamato if you really are going to do it in clans, and so like it. I don't know. I'm sure there's fans of this ship. There's fans of every ship, and that's a fun thing in this game.
Sure.
But this is definitely one in my port that doesn't get out that often, and it's always a thing with steel ships because most of us work a long time to get enough steel together to get a steel ship. And so it's always kind of a disappointment when you get a steel ship and it just doesn't do it for you.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're like, oh, well, in 6 months, I'll have enough steel to try again. So that's how this ship is for me. Like, we've talked, you and I have talked, I've joked before with friends in the clan that, I'd pay Wargaming 500 dubs if they would let me take like any steel ship out for like a 2-game rental
for just a trial run.
And just to try it and see if I liked it before I gave them the steel for it. But that's how the game's built. They want you to give this hard-earned resource for something that you end up not liking, so then you try again. So
yeah,
Shikishima.
So we're starting off with something of a somber statement, right? Shikishima kind of being nestled where it is between Musashi, Yamato, and oh crap, what's the super ship you were just talking about? Satsuma. When it's nestled in there and it isn't distinctly special from those other ships in some way that makes her, obviously advantageous. And then you talk about the rarity of that resource. Obviously, we've got people who are out there grinding steel so they can slap it on, their Howden-Lews or whatever, or getting a steel camo on some ship that's like not that competitive just for fun. And we like good and Lou on this channel too, by the way. But like, it's just one of those things where people love to blow steel on things when they've got such a glut of it. Most players are not in that situation, and so it's that that 6-month window, waiting for a coupon, things like that, is a really realistic story. And so I think a lot of people want those steel ships to be special. Sorry, go ahead.
We're average. I think we're average Joes in that regard, and I know there's a lot of folks that they might be able to get a steel ship a year, right? And sure, I think steel's being made more available with things like Battle Pass, good, bad, or indifferent. Yeah. But I do think that you put a lot of time and effort into different modes, and a lot of them stressful modes in this game to get your hands on steel. And when you get one of these ships and it doesn't, you're just kind of like, wow, oh well, like it's kind of it is what it is. And that's how I feel the same way about Research Bureau ships. It's always kind of frustrating when you get one of those and it doesn't hit it off with you, and you're just kind of like, well, darn it, it is what it is. And so this ship, I wish I could say that there was something that I thought was like really great about it. But I'm not a big IJN battleship guy to begin with. And this ship just hasn't. I've had fine games in it. I've had fun games in it. I've had bad games in it. I guess it's just like anything else, but there's nothing about it where I'm just like, you got to have it. Other than the gun sound. The gun sound used to be unique and really cool, but it's not anymore.
Good. Yeah,
there's like a few things that have that sound now, right? And so it is what it is.
You see my face light up when you say gun sound. I'm like, because it is rad. And my experience with that has been driving a destroyer near someone else, possibly you, running this boat, because I don't have any of the jumbo gun battleships because it's just not my thing. We got a couple of comments in chat, like Mike Tango chuckles about stressful modes, but I mean, there are modes where you care about winning and it can cause people to break keyboards and things. Not that you're gonna lose sleep over playing a clan battle or something. Let's see, I had another comment in here I wanted to get up there. A Radiant says, I regret getting FDR. We'll be talking about FDR, right? And so there, that concept of steel ship regret, again, not unique to Shikishima. It's going to be different for every player. And there are going to be players who are super stoked about Shiki and they take it out all the time, and that's fantastic. I want to kind of jump to Incomparable, and I'll say some words, and then you can tell me where I'm off the deep end. Sure. This is a guy who's again, I don't have Incomparable, but Incomparable is another one of those boats that came out, and now we have a tech tree version that's pretty darn good. If you want to look at Shikishima, compare it to Yamato, we saw St. Vincent, the tech tree version of the Incomparable, or the British battlecruiser thing, get used extensively in COTS, and now we're seeing it being used extensively in clan battles, but we're not seeing Incomparables in those same environments. I kind of want to throw it to you to say, when you're thinking about taking a ship into one of those modes, what's the difference that's making people choose St. Vincent, a ship you can get for a lot less work than getting a steel ship?
Maybe
I'll just ask you a question rather than make a wild statement.
I think you're accurate in that, making that statement, right? Incomparable is one of those things. We talk about this when we talk about other ships. Usually we have this conversation about, like a random premium, like Fushun or something. That was the progenitor of Pan-Asian destroyers, or something like that. Or we talk about Eigel or one of those things. It's like they put that premium out, and then 6-8 months later, a year later, they put out a tech line, and it was kind of like, will that work? Incomparable is that, right? Incomparable was the proof of concept for this like British battlecruiser line. And they put it out. It hasn't even been out a year, right? Incomparable came out last January. It came out in like patch 11.0 or 11.1, right? It's been out. Hadn't even been out a year yet.
Right.
And then 6 months into that year, they dropped the British battlecruiser line. And so, Incomparable is there's a lot of things that's really neat about this ship. It has like the lowest concealment, if built for it, of like any battleship at tier. Its concealment is obscenely low. It has huge guns, right? And the reload on them is pretty quick. It has, single launch torpedoes that are on the sides. You see the launchers right there on the aft decks. It's got hydros which the Techline British battle cruisers don't. It has speed boost. It's got a lot of bells and whistles. Downside, it also has mega heal, right? It has super mega British style heal, which the high tier Techline ships do. It has less hit points than St. Vincent, since we're talking about comparing it to the tier 10 tech tree ship, right? St. Vincent's just shy of 10,000 more hit points. Armor profiles are similar. They both kind of are thin skinned. They're both kind of built around the concept of move fast, go dark, and use mega heals to get your health back, right? So when you think of those concepts, yeah, that's fun. And when this ship was the only one like it in the game, we would see this in competitive. I remember we saw these in clans last spring. Must have been last spring or maybe winter when there was tier 10 clans. I remember seeing these.
Yeah.
It was kind of like, oh, it's one of those things, right? And it overmatches everything. It's these huge guns, and they really slap. Great sound effects on them. I think it's got relatively good AA, yada, yada, yada. And so when I had the deal this summer to purchase this ship, I decided, yeah, I'm going to buy this one. And that was already when the British battlecruiser line had been released. And I remember telling you, I don't know if I'm going to buy Incomparable anymore because I think St. Vincent's probably better.
We did have that conversation, yeah.
I'd been playing St. Vincent, and I had played Incomparable. I was able to play Incomparable before I bought it. And I thought, I think St. Vincent's better. St. Vincent has 9 guns. 6 guns versus 9 guns. St. Vincent only has 457s, but they're tested because they're the same guns as Thunder, and everybody hates them there, right? Everybody fears the Thunder's guns, right? And so here they are. You've got this great 457 AP that works everything over. It has great HE. Thunder's, St. Vincent has the weird bow torpedoes where if you get in a situation where your nose into somebody, you can launch these silly torpedoes, and they are effective and they work, and you can use them, and it's fun. And so it's kind of like you look at Incomparable, and it was like, what if we make this kind of ship, and they make it for steel? Usually we see that, and it's not like a steel ship, right? So they make it for steel, and then 6 months later, they're like, here's a tech line, and the tier 10's better. I really do think the reason we're seeing, I personally do think St. Vincent is probably better. It's not it doesn't get as much concealment. Its guns aren't as big. It doesn't launch as many torpedoes. It doesn't have hydros. But I do think it's the better of the two, because if you're going to fight in either of them, bow in. You can see that picture right there. Incomp has 4 barrels forward. St. Vincent at least has 6, and it's got that weird third. It's almost like an ABC turret configuration because all the turrets are kind of up front. Weird. And you can just get those guns involved, whereas in Incomparable, you're on an ABX configuration, and the turret angles on that third turret are amazing. You can get that third turret around without giving up too much side, which is good because this thing doesn't have much armor.
You're talking about the third turret on Incomparable?
Yeah, on Incomparable.
Yeah.
You can get the back turret on it around because it's only 2 barrels, right? And so you get really tight angles with it, but you got to keep those angles because it doesn't have any armor. You're really reliant on the mega heal to bring it back to life. And that's the same on St. Vincent. I just feel like St. Vincent ended up being better than this ship. I don't ever feel like the hydros, like I think of the hydros is kind of the difference. I don't feel like the hydros really are going to save me either way.
Well, I do think that with the prominence of St. Vincent in King of the Sea, and with the prevalence that we're seeing it in clan battles, and with how relatively new the ship is, I'm suspecting that 3 to 6 months we'll see an adjustment to that ship. I have, of course, no evidence of this whatsoever, and we could see adjustments to Incomparable. I think it's new enough in the game that it could get adjusted as well. But I suspect that St. Vinny is going to get a visit from the adjustment ferry, and we may see some changes to that ship. So now, of course, is a great time to play St. Vincent.
Yeah. You see St. Vincent all over competitive modes. It was in COTS as soon as it was available. People are playing it in clan battles this season. I was playing it in clan battles until they
restricted.
They did the restrictions, and then we kind of made the decision that it made more sense to have an Ohio than have me in that. And then I tried playing Incomparable in place of St. Vincent, and it did not do the same things. I couldn't play it the same way. And so then I bailed out on it and started playing Bourgogne instead.
Yeah, which is hilarious. It's a pick we don't often see in clan battles, but we've seen more than just ours this season, and we'll talk about that too. We can't talk about Bourgogne. Maybe we'll bounce there next. I am like a single-digit number of games in Bourgogne, right? So I'll certainly I'll welcome comments from chat, comments from Skada, of course, as we talk about Bourgogne. Bourgogne's got 380 millimeter guns. It's got the reload booster that we enjoy from some of those French, I can't hit view in port because I already own the ship. That's silly. Those French battleships. And of course, it's got some speed. It pays for some of this with lighter armor, which is one of its weaknesses. I find Bourgogne to be a ton of fun. And because it's the only one of these 4 ships that I have, for me, obviously, that's my recommendation. If you're getting one of these ships, I would get Bourgogne because I did. In fact, last time we did the Steel Ships video, I said, I'm going to get Bourgogne. And then I sat on my coupon for a few months because I thought maybe back then Bazan might be really powerful and might be a steel boat. It ended up being a coal boat and being what it is, which is fine. And so I ended up sitting on that steel longer than I needed to. Turned around and I did spend the coupon to get Bourgogne. And I've been happy with it. I do need to go out and log, 30 battles or something to really get comfortable with the ship. Skada, your experience with Bourgogne has been longer than mine. You're running it in clan battles right now. You've run it in randoms many times. What are the merits and what are maybe the weaknesses of that ship that somebody who's considering buying one would be interested to know?
Yeah, Bourgogne was my first steel ship. I remember most of the folks we know, including yourself, everybody's like, "Yeah, first steel ship's gonna be Stalingrad. Get Stalingrad.
I mean, that's a common.
And I was
pick,
like, and I was like, no, I'm getting Bourgogne because at the time, I didn't really know anybody that had it, and I love Alsace, and I don't really like Republique, but I really like Richelieu, Gascon, Alsace, Jean Bar, and Bourgogne continues that design language, right? It's a tier 10 Alsace, but it's accurate. They like to say that this is the unnerfed Alsace because Alsace was nerfed and this one wasn't. This one's dope, and this one has main battery reload booster, and it's fast, and it has mysterious French black hole armor that even though it only has 32 millimeters of plate, shells get lost in it and you don't get citadeled. This ship is this is one that I do not regret. This is not a regretted purchase. And to be fair, I don't have fond memories of taking this out in randoms. I felt like for a while every time I took it out in randoms I got skunked.
Yeah.
But I have had but different tier 10 seasons I have taken it out in clans. This season a lot. And it's always fun. It's always fun. It feels like it might be getting a little long in the tooth. It doesn't feel to me as fast as it used to compared to some of the competition out there, because it always felt super fast, and it's still fast, but it doesn't feel as fast maybe.
Yeah.
The guns are small, right? Those are only 380s. You got to take something with overmatch. Okay, and then you go out there and you put those 12 shells on target and slap the bejesus out of stuff at ranges, and they're very usable because the shell speed is great. And there isn't a ton of drag on French battleship gun shells, so you don't. It's not Russian rail guns, but it's probably the next best thing in game, right? The guns work.
Well, and one of the things
they go where you want them to. It's just a ton of fun.
Yeah, I'll jump in with a comment. I'm sure there's more to share there too, but one of the things you and I talk a lot about is overpens. And as the ships in this game get more and more armored, the cruisers get more and more armored, and players get better at angling. In a light cruiser, you can still get pens without getting overpens with a 380, whereas your 460s, your 457s might go through, things like that. The reload booster is great. It's 8 barrels forward. Obviously, I've been showing the ship on the screen here, which is nice. So you can be bow in if you need to be. It's got a helipad, so whenever they add helicopters to the game, I'm expecting that to come, with a helicopter. That's definitely not true, but she can really do great work against cruisers. You talk about that overmatch, and I think we can still get a lot of good cruiser work done with this ship as well. You mentioned speed. I wanted to call that out, at least in my build, without a captain. She goes 33.6 knots, so the speed is reasonable, although she's not Georgia fast, but really very few things are. Anyway,
but she does have speed boost.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, if we look at the equipment.
She does have speed boost, and you can get that running.
15% speed boost too. That's a good one.
I think we both run the speed coal module on it because yes.
Yep, I do indeed.
And so it's a good speed boost with a speed flag. She gets up and big girl likes to run. She likes to get out and go.
Yeah, definitely. I've enjoyed my time with Bourgogne. Of course, I need more time in the saddle with it. We just got a nice review from you too as well. So definitely very complimentary for this ship as we kind of look at these.
Yeah,
options.
you look at the Tier 10 battleships available for steel. She's got the second highest AP DPM. She actually has the highest HE DPM. Her HE is really good too. She has second highest range. Her range stock is 24.8. Base reload's 28 seconds. 28-second reload on 12 guns. That always makes you happy.
Which makes it 14 when you're using the reload. I mean, come on, dude.
Yeah, and because the base range is so high, you run reload in slot 6, and so the reload's more like 26. And that always feels good. I'm to the point where I can't stand battleships with anything over a 30-second reload. I just don't want to play them.
So my reload with captain on board is 24.6 base, which means reload booster is 12.3. Even at 24.6 though, look at the French, look at Marseille, right? The Tier 10, what's its reload? I don't actually have that ship yet. Do you know what Marseille's reload is? But this is a battleship with reload booster that can reload almost as fast probably.
Oh, you talking about the new cruiser?
Yeah, the new big girl cruiser.
Marseille has what's her base reloads? 24.
Yeah, same as my built Bourgogne is 24.6. So you're right in there, right? Ice Cube says, and then you add AR to the mix, right? So talking about adrenaline rush, the commander skill. So when you're half dead, you get a 10% bump. That's another 2.5 seconds off my 24.6. I mean, come on, it gets crazy.
Yeah, just looking at flight time for the shells, and it's not a straight fair comparison amongst all, because not all these ships can shoot 20 kilometers, but I'm looking at a 20 kilometer shot, and flight time on the shells is 11 seconds flat at 20. Shikishima is 11.1, which surprises me because those big shells feel slower than that.
Yeah.
Incomparable can't shoot that far unless its spotter plane is up. But if it does, its flight time's 12.5, right? Its shells are slower, and even Mecklenburg, which we haven't talked about yet, its flight time at that range is 11.5. So Bourgogne's shells just feel like they get where you want them. The Sigma's 1.8, which isn't the best amongst these steel ships, but with 12 shells, if you get all of them flying downfield, you're going to get a lot of pens. You're not going to get as many over pens. It just feels satisfying to use.
Yeah. Disc of Accretion says, important question, do they all go pew pew?
They go hon 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 hon, right? They do the French sound effects. Ho ho
hon 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 hon. Hey Hebrantes, welcome to the channel. Disc of Accretion, welcome. Thank you for your comment. Yeah, I don't know. We're fans of Bourgogne here. Like I said, I need to spend more games in it, but I definitely know that the folks who are Bourgogne fans tend to be avid Bourgogne fans.
This is not a hot take. This isn't like a wild point of view. This is a standard
we're
issue point of view.
We're not breaking the mold here.
We're potatoes, and the good players will tell you this is the steel battleship to get to.
Yeah, that's probably true.
It's probably the most reliable and most fun.
Yeah, and a lot of those players would say, I don't know why you wouldn't just get St. Vincent and not get a steel battleship too. They're like, but at least for now. But I think Bourgogne still is a good place to put your steel.
Those are the same players we're talking about that are like, I don't know, I've got 150,000 steel in the bank and I don't have anything to get, so I'm just gonna go get camo for my Xenon, right?
Putting a steel camo on the Minotaur or whatever they're doing, right?
Exactly.
Got to go pick up the Minotaur from the shop. Had a steel camo put on. We love players of all walks of life, but Mecklenburg is very, very popular because of the love of German battleships in World of Warships. Scott, I'm going to just throw Mecklenburg to you because I feel like I don't have intelligent things to say about it, but I'll watch chat. Chat, if you guys have Mecklenburg comments, I'll try to pull some of those in while Scott gives us the overview on this ship, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, Mecklenburg, the newest of these ships, it was released a few months ago. When we're recording this, it would have been like summer of 2022, I believe, is when that came out. It's a Tier 10 German battleship that's popular with the fan base. It is actually not a Grosser Kurfürst or a Preußen hull. It's the same hull as Frederick Grosse or Pommern. So you're taking a Tier 9 hull and you're dragging it up to Tier 10. Mm-hmm. And that includes the problems that hull design has with turning hard at speed and raising up your lifting your skirt, if you will, but it's you know, this, you can actually lift your turtle back up in a turn at speed, and you can take citadels in that
Right,
hull.
because you're
It's a
getting
problem
some roll in the ship.
it's a problem that Freddie and Palmer have, and this ship has it too.
It has to do with
Mecklenburg,
that water line, you know, being right where it happens to be in that ship. Sorry, continue.
Mecklenburg's gimmick is obviously the 16 guns, right? It's 4x4, and they're 305 millimeter, right? So they're small caliber comparatively.
Marie calendars.
Marie calendars, yeah, they're pot pies, slinging pot pies everywhere.
Yes.
And it has, you know, a great base range at 22 kilometers and a great base reload at 26 seconds. So if you build for reload on it, you know, you're pushing that reload down into like super cruiser territory almost. You know, you're getting that reload really low, and it's a lot of barrels. So you like playing Marlborough,
I kind of do.
Last year's Christmas dockyard ship, the British battleship that has this number of small guns, except that its guns are a little bigger, but it has a crazy number of guns.
16.
And so looking at this, you know, it has that same kind of design language where they've just chock-a-blocked this thing full of these smaller guns. Mecklenburg also has, you know, full battery of secondaries. I think all the secondaries on it are 128s. Yeah, it's got 12x2 128s. So it's kind of like GK in that regard. You don't have to worry about, like, if you were going to build Mecklenburg for secondary combat, you don't need to worry about building into to IFHE really. That's usually kind of only what you would do for like your 105 millimeter, like on Pommern you would. Schlieffen obviously does shit. But on this one you probably wouldn't. That said, I wouldn't necessarily say that you would build this ship for secondary combat. I'm sure that people out there do, but I don't know that I would really you know, push in on that concept with this ship, at least as it's designed.
That seems to be the consensus among the tryhards and the nerds and the analysts, is that really you want to build this thing for the main battery and go with that fast reload and those big 305s that it brings.
And it does have torpedoes. It has 2x4 torps, you know, German style, like torps on the hips, like your Tirpitz.
Yeah.
Your Odin, your Pommern, ostensible style torpedoes, where you've got, you know, torps back on the ship's hips for that brawling kind of attack. 6 kilometer torps, not crazy. Actually, I guess they're not on the hips; they're up midships. I was thinking they were further back, but anyway, you know, in that brawling style torpedo thing. So you could say, okay, well, you know, I've got Freddie Hull. Freddie can brawl. Pommern can brawl. I've got torps. That's great. That's like Pommern.
You start thinking she's a brawler.
Got these 128 millimeter secondaries, so I don't have to build into IFHE. So I can maybe I can spend those 2 points on vigilance or something, right? And you might want to, because this girl does not have hydros.
Yeah.
Where you're thinking
hydro.
Where you're thinking, there's all these other ships that are like this have hydros, and this one doesn't. And so that's one reason maybe why you don't want to lean in the brawling capacity unless you want to eat a face full of torpedoes, because you're not going to see them coming. It's got that. It's almost like Tirpitz in that regard, right? Where you're like, well, I don't have hydros, and so that part of it I think makes it less apt. I do think that the preferred build amongst Chads is putting accuracy in slot 3 and not secondary range, and it's putting reload in slot 6 and not secondary shenanigans, right? It's putting main battery protection in slot 1 and not secondary protection. And I think if you end up in ranges, you know, because German battleships have long range secondaries even really without building into them. I think the base range on them without building into them, you know, is over 8, right? What is it like? Yeah, 8.3. You know, maybe they're not going to be accurate if you're not taking manual secondary stuff, but at least they're there. If a DD gets close, they're going to shoot, and they're 128s, and they have German quarter pins, so they're not horrible.
Well, you can option into those. Is kind of like, I did some math and some looking and some nerding. I didn't go full out and like write up a thing about it. You can option into them, and players will because it's fun, not because it's optimal, right? Right. So like we got a comment in chat here. Frost Knight says he drew an arrow toward himself and said, "This guy builds mech for second." Of course you do, man. I expect nothing less from you. Kill Panic says, "Is it just me, or can anyone else just listen to Skada talk about tier 10 battleships all day?"
You should. That's nice of you to say, but you should probably find somebody that knows more about what they're talking about.
You should definitely always check more than one source. I think some of it might be about your buttery smooth voice. Ice Cube says, I'm assuming the gun angles are better than on Marby. And that I don't know.
That you would assume incorrectly. The rear gun angles on Mecklenburg are, in a word, god awful. The
Oh
four
no.
barrels, the 4 barrels per turret limits their ability to come around. I'm trying to find I've seen this picture.
The
And I might
diagram of the angles and
the
the
diagram of the angles.
I have heard the back boat or the back boat torpedoes off at a back boat. The back angles are not incredible.
Yeah,
but
the
again,
back
I
angles.
have any experience.
When you're trying to get all your turrets around and keep an angle, you really have to open up more than you want to.
Mm-hmm.
You can get away with it because you've got a Freddy hull.
Yeah.
But you're fighting, where Freddy and Palmer might luck into fighting sevens. In Mecklenburg, you're going to luck into fighting Satsumas. You're gonna luck into fighting.
These days, there's so many super ship missions. They're everywhere.
Yeah, what's this new one? Ushakov, Admiral. You're going to fight Admiral Ushakov, right? And so when you have to open up as much side as you do with this thing, you're not going to get Citadel directly,
Right.
but you're going to take big, meaty, full pens to your upper belt from anybody in another ship that knows how to aim, and that's going to happen from cruisers that you face too.
Mm-hmm.
And you still have a big, giant German superstructure.
You do,
and
you're
you're
going to
get farmed for fires, and so. This has all the same problems that high-tier German battleships have, except it isn't the most unfun to play. I think there's a lot of interesting things that it does that makes it different. But there is that problem, right? Where I like German battleships. I think we all like German battleships, but it's you get like maybe 1 in 3 matches where you're like, man, that was awesome. I was able to really make that German battleship do German battleship things, and the enemies went down and did all the things. And then those other 2 matches, you are put on a spit and roasted alive, or you are just crushed by crazy aircraft carrier problems, right? And so it's kind of it's kind of one of those things where you're waiting to get back to that 33 percentile match where it's actually a ton of fun. At least that's my experience.
Yeah.
In tier 10 German battleships. But yeah, those rear turret angles are rough.
A couple of comments from chat. Forrester 1980 says, if building into the main battery is the Chad move, then you can call me Chatty McChatterton. And I said, hello, Chad.
Mr. McChatterton, it's nice to meet you. We talk about you often.
Shake, shake, shake as we shake the hands. Let's see. True for unless it's clan battles, then your best do the formal build out. Says Mike Tango. Yeah, it makes sense. Jackal says German technology is the best technology in the world, which is something about anime I've been led to believe.
Yeah, it's an anime thing.
Some sort of a thing that I don't understand.
A cartoon screams it in Japanese. I don't get it.
Very confusing, but that's
too old.
Yeah, it's all good. Ice Cube says, I just looked it up. Mech has 47-degree angles versus Marlboro's 42-degree angles. Neither of those are good numbers. So it does sound like Mech might have slightly better angles because bigger is better, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong in that case. But it's all good. Mike Tango, let's keep this PG-13 if you don't mind. I appreciate you. All right. We are, that's kind of the Mecklenburg discussion. I do think that Mecklenburg is interesting to me. We had somebody earlier, and I apologize, viewer, I can't scroll that far, and I don't remember who said it. They said Bourgogne first, I think Mecklenburg was second, Incomparable third, then Shikishima. That's the order. And I think for me, that's the order. I don't know if that's going to be the order for every player. Skada, does Incomparable or Mecklenburg take that number 2 slot for you, do you think?
It depends on, well, like, just for me, for my port.
Yeah, just for you as an individual player.
Incomparable did because I could have bought Mecklenburg and I bought Incomparable.
Oh, that's true. They were both outside.
They were both available when I bought Incomparable, yeah. But more than likely in 7 days and however many minutes when my coupon resets, I'm going to buy Mecklenburg.
Right.
I would say, though, that I agree with that ordering, though. Right now and today, I would go Bourgogne, Mecklenburg,
and I think
Shikishima.
St. Vincent is part of the reason why Mecklenburg steps in front of Incomparable in line, at least for me. And that may be true for other players as well. Okay, I feel like we spent like a half hour talking about battleships. Probably it wasn't that long, but we should roll along. Our next category we're going to talk about today is cruisers and light cruisers. Just like battleships, we've got 4 of each of those. Vallejo is available. I don't think either of us can actually talk about Vallejo. I have played it, but it's not in my port. And so I'm not allowed to talk about it for testing reasons. I can talk about Stalingrad and Plymouth, because I do own both of those ships. And I don't think I've ever played Austin. That is one that I've never played even on my press account. Interesting. So I think maybe we'll start with Stalingrad. That is a long-standing steel ship. In fact, I believe the first steel ship ever. Stalingrad is excellent. It's got I think the highest sigma in the game. I want to say it's like 2.5 or 2.6, where we think of a good sigma as 2.0 or above. Ships that they have good accuracy tend to be 2.0. If you don't know what sigma is the likelihood of your shells to land where you clicked on or closer to the center of your dispersion ellipse. So when we talk about gun accuracy, your dispersion has a width and a height, and they're not equal. They tend to be oval shaped, not circular. And then the higher your sigma is the more likely those shells will land in the center of that ellipse. So if anybody's unfamiliar with that term and how that works. Stalingrad also has big guns. I want to say they're 305s. My memory is starting to fail me. So very accurate rifles, 6 guns forward, 3 guns out back. Very strong very strong Soviet armor on this thing. She will burn with 60-second fires, which is one of the weaknesses of a lot of these super cruisers, like Stalingrad, like Alaska, like Aegir, like those kinds of big cruisers. When those were first coming into the game, they had battleship fire durations, and Stalingrad is no different. So it is one of her weaknesses. Stalingrad, Skada, is a ship you've got in your port. It was not your first steel ship. I remember you were just talking about how we were talking Stalingrad, or what should you get? And you went with Bourgogne. You do have Stalingrad now. Share a little bit about your experience. Why would you want to grab Stalingrad? Why would you not? And maybe your experience with it since it's been in your port.
I think by the numbers, Stalingrad was my 4th ship. So yeah, all the things you said. It's a 2.65 sigma, which I'm pretty sure is the highest in game.
Was it 2.5? Okay, wow.
2.65, right?
Oh, so it's higher than both of the numbers I thought it was, which I thought were absurd.
Yeah, it's obscene. And the horizontal dispersion though is 199 meters, which isn't epic. The vertical dispersion is 115 meters, which also isn't amazing, but isn't bad, right? That's good, but it's not like crazy good. But that sigma's like best in game, I assume. I don't think anything's got a better sigma than that. I might be wrong though. So add it to the YouTube comments. Scott is wrong, and here's why.
We will get comments on this video. We're going to say enough stuff.
I got this ship. I used this in clans the last season after I got it. It's a classic clan battles ship. When they made the changes to the captain rework and they removed the ability to build a cruiser captain with fire resistance, all ships like this took a nerf, right? 60-second fires on Stalingrad, on Puerto Rico, Alaska, Kronstadt, Sevastopol, all of these big cruisers that take the 60-second fires. Gudenlu, Houdenlau, however you want to say it. I don't know. I don't
Golden
speak Dutch.
Lion. I mean, pick a language. We can say it in a couple of. Some will sound
better than others. And so like all those ships have those long fires, and so that kind of sucks. But Stalingrad is such a beast and such a tank, and the guns are such a delight. It really is. The reload is long because they're big crazy 305s, and they're 21-second reload, but it just, they go where you put them and they scream. 18-kilometer range. If you take a shot at 18 kilometers with Stalingrad, the flight time on the shells. And now this is one of those ships, they don't do this much anymore, but this is one of those ships where the drag is different depending on if it's AP or HE.
Yeah.
But the AP shells are faster than the HE shells, which is fine because you want to shoot the AP on this thing.
Yeah, you're going to spend most of your time in there.
18-kilometer flight time with the AP is 8.8 seconds.
We were just talking about a 20-kilometer with those battleships being 11 point something.
Yeah.
So that's
20
fast.
20 flat. I don't Stalingrad might have Stalingrad's base range is 20.4. So it's at 20 kilometer. We were talking about how Bourgogne 20
Yeah.
kilometer flight time is 11.1, I believe is what it was. 11.1.
It was low 11s, yeah.
Stalingrad's is 10.1. It's a full second lower.
Jeez.
And so when you're in fighting range with this thing, in cruiser fighting ranges, your flight time's obscene. You click and the shells are where they go. And in Russian cruisers, that's a thing, right? They all have rockets coming out of those gun barrels, but this ship especially.
Yeah.
And then those shells just tear up what you shoot them at. They are so strong. The AP DPM on this ship is 236,000 and change, right? That's not amazing, but really good for the size of shells. The AP salvo damage is almost 83,000. They're just a delight. And I scoffed at this ship for a long time. Like I said, it was my fourth steel ship. I wasn't in a hurry to get it. And then I finally got it, and I was like, good Lord, I should have got this earlier, because the guns are just they're so much different. They really are, like, I don't want to call it like the easy mode guns, but they're just so easy to put on target and just smash things with.
Yeah, I think there's still talent and skill required with Stalingrad. I remember when it first came out, all of us plebes who didn't have steel were like, oh no, Stalingrad's in this battle. And it didn't take us very long to realize that they burn just like anybody else. You know what I mean? Like, you can bring one down. They're not invulnerable, but what they can do is really dish it up. You can get citadeled and it feels like a battleship just slapped you from great range. I have a video on my YouTube channel where I compare Stalingrad and Petropavlovsk and Moskva and Sevastopol in excruciating detail. If you're interested in that, I can find it and drop it into the chat box. But one of the things that's interesting about Stalingrad is that its guns are 305s. The only ship in that list that has bigger guns is Sev, and Sev has 380s but only has 6 of them, where Stalingrad has 9 of these 305s. So she's very, very powerful. She's incredibly accurate, and she's tanky as heck. I mean, it's just a ship that can do a lot of work. Now, I am not particularly skilled in Stalingrad. That stationary tanky style is something that I don't enjoy very much. But I have had some incredible games, and I think I mentioned, the last time we did this discussion about, slapping Yamatos for incredible amounts of damage from when they were foolish enough to give up a broadside. I mean, you can do work with Stalingrad, and she does not find her way into the highest tiers of clan battle play due to the long fires and things like that she suffers from, which Petro is less vulnerable to. But she is a very strong ship just the same. And if you're in a situation where clan battle restrictions have turned off your access to Petro, you can switch to a Stalingrad, at least in bronze or silver or gold ranked, clan battles. I think when you get up any higher than that, people might point at you and be like, Stalingrad doesn't make sense because of the meta. And those people will be right. And in those levels of play, you're going to need to consider an alternative, perhaps. But I think you can do a ton of great things with Stalingrad in random battles and in ranked as well, where the teams are less coordinated than in clan battles. And in certain leagues of clan battles, I think it's still a welcome addition to a lot of teams.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, leaving the concept of what makes sense in clans aside, Stalingrad's a ton of fun in randoms because of how it's fun to smash stuff. And it has 12-kilometer radar, and so it brings some utility. And and it's one of the ships that, because of the screaming speed of those shells, like, I can tag like condes. Like when you have a conde on the run that's like 18 kilometers away from you that's streaking along doing conde things, you can hit that guy because your shells are so fast. You don't have to worry about his speed. Mm-hmm. You can make that shot at those ranges before he can dodge him out of the way, right? And so it's one of those ships where, like, it's going to take fires, right? There's a lot of ships that will make your life feel bad in Stalingrad because of how it takes fires and stuff, but it's still a lot of fun. And so even if you don't think you're a competitive player, you're not playing ranked, you're not playing clans, it's still a lot of fun to take those guns out into randoms and smash stuff, especially in randoms where then you might even get to fight tier 8s. You could really ruin a lot of tier 8s day with those guns.
Yeah. And, looking at Stalingrad's main battery reload, we mentioned its radar. You brought up the 12-kilometer radar, which is fantastic. The radar did take a nerf recently, and it's one of my favorite things to lament about is how they nerfed my steel ship. But the radar did lose some of its duration, and it does have a relatively long main battery reload. But obviously the accuracy, the punch those shells have is quite powerful. And so that's part of the cost you pay, is to have that longer reload paired with that radar. Sometimes you'll only get 1 or maybe 2 salvos in while your radar's up. So you want to make sure you time those things to get the maximum benefit, and or coordinate with your team if you're in a scenario where you can, or if you've got a div mate who can help you when you use that radar, to make sure you get that radar conversion, kill the destroyer, the smoke cruiser, whatever it is you're looking for. So anyway, that is Stalingrad. Have you played Austin? Or do you own Austin, I should ask, is the question I should ask.
No, I do not.
Neither have I owned Austin. So we may have to leave Austin on the table, but we can speak somewhat to what we've got written on the page here. And let me pull it up over here. So Austin, we know this as the tier 10 steel ship. Mike Tango, I will get to Plymouth, and I own Plymouth, and I've played a ton of games in it. I can't wait to talk about Plymouth, but I am trying to kind of balance that a little bit as we walk through the list of ships. So we are definitely getting to Plymouth. So Austin is powered with SAP shells and with HE shells. So those of you guys who wound up getting a San Diego, she's got SAP shells and AP shells, but she doesn't have the HE, because that's a very powerful thing with a reload booster and with a and with HE and the ability to put that many shells down range. So Austin still gets to keep that HE, which is a very powerful trick if you're going to be doing some HE spam. She does have reload booster. She's got a turbo AA consumable. I don't know if you have to swap that for your hydroacoustics, but we will find out if we can.
Yeah, and you got to remember the gimmick on this ship is that you don't run out of those reload boosters. It's an unlimited resource.
So gosh, I did not know.
It runs for they run for 15 seconds, and then it reloads, and you can do it again, but you don't run out of them.
So there's not a limited number of consumables for reload booster.
Nope, it is an unlimited resource on that ship, which is its calling card, right? And it's not. I think it's taken a nerf, maybe it hasn't, but it runs for 15 seconds, and it just jacks up that ability to just crush things with the SAP or the HE. Austin, unlike, if you look at it, it's kind of like people are like, oh, it's like a tier 10 Atlanta, right? Well, okay, ultimately where we're at in the game now that Austin's been out for a while, it's the same ship as Xenon, right? Or Xenon is the same as an Austin, ostensibly.
Right.
The Pan-Asian tier 10 cruiser. It just doesn't have SAP. Xenon has AP and HE, doesn't have the reload booster, doesn't have that stuff, has deep water torps. So if you've played Xenon, you probably have an understanding kind of how to handle a ship like this, although Austin doesn't have smoke like Xenon.
Yeah, you need islands, not smoke.
You need islands, but it's got unlimited main battery reload boosters. It also has 10.5 kilometer torpedoes that don't suck. They actually hit really hard, which is unlike unlike Atlanta, or it's more like Flint in that regard. Yeah, it's got really good torps, but it's that play style, right? It's that Atlanta, Flint, Shumfon, Sejong,
Xenon, Harbin, kind of thing, right?
Not Harbin. Harbin's Russian. That's Harbin.
True. Harbin's got the other.
It's all that U.S. light cruiser hull style. I was rattling off all the ones I can think of, right? And so that's kind of that. It's just that this one's calling card is unlimited. Yes, San Diego. Thanks, Frost Knight. This one's calling card is the unlimited main battery reload booster, and just hammering down with that SAP or with that HE. This is a ship. This is like a ship with I would say with a high skill floor.
Yes. And
really high damage ceiling for players that are really good. Like, these ships can wreck teams in the hands of good players, and you can go out onto YouTube's after you've watched this review and look for your CCs and the like playing Austin, and you'll see these. Oh yeah, I only had 200,000 damage. That kind of thing, right? Because it really can put a lot of damage out for people who know how to position in it.
Looking at her consumables, she does have hydros and turbo AA or focus fire AA or whatever that's called. She's also got a hull repair module as well. So lots of consumables available. Again, no smoke like we have in the Pan Asian cruiser line. So you're going to need to use that geography to your to your benefit. Hojoy says Austin has Benson torpedoes. It's one of the many ships that has something like that, although I think the damage here might be higher than on Benson. Somebody should fact check me on that.
I think I don't Benson Torp. Whenever we talk about Benson Torps, I always think about 9.2s. These are 10.5s.
Yeah, I think these might.
So I think
be
that
like
more
the
might be
ones
like
on,
a Fletcher Torp or something.
or Benham maybe has 10.5s. I think.
Yeah, actually, that
So
might
it
be
could
what
be
they are
Benham.
exactly. They might be the Benham Torps.
But they're very common to some of those American ships. We keep finding more of those ships that have 10.5s, and so we're going to need to compile that list because the Benson Torps, Benham Torps lists are now competing for which one is on the most ships. But yeah, I think Austin, your comment about it having a high skill floor is 100% true. I think it's an easy ship to get caught out in and getting yourself dunked on. FZRS 4523 says they're from Fletcher. Thank you guys for fact checking that. We appreciate it. Fuzzers, thanks for the follow earlier, by the way. And we did get, but I think this is definitely the kind of ship that you can absolutely get caught out in and deleted very, very rapidly. This is what I consider to be like an ultralight cruiser, very small guns, very light armor. And so you can be in the wrong place much more easily than you can be in the right place. And so I think, you're going to want to put some time in and spend a lot of time thinking about your positioning with this ship, just as you do with all those other ultralights. Yeah,
that said, I totally want this ship because like I really like San Diego and like San Diego, what this has that a lot of those other like Atlantas and don't have is there is a thick strip of armor down the midships in this that at angles you can bounce shells, right? This has that, like San Diego and this both have that like strip that lets you get away with some stuff.
Look at this, 95 mil.
Yeah, this lets you get away with some stuff, and so at angles you can take sharp angles in these, and you're still firing like a bunch of the guns, and you can bounce shells. Like San Diego does the same. By the way, San Diego, if you want similar to the Austin experience at a more affordable price than steel, San Diego. But
allow me to introduce you to San Diego.
Yeah, but it's kind of Austin light, but. There's some neat stuff about the ship. I want. That's the thing is I really want all four of these cruisers.
I know.
And yet, what did I say? I'm gonna buy Mecklenburg next because I'm an idiot. But I really want this ship. I really want Plymouth because I just think they'd be fun.
Yeah. And that's a thing that, when we're coming to buy a steel ship, this is kind of a general steel ship discussion at this point, like this part. People want to buy something they think is useful. They're buying a tool. They're buying something for clans or for ranked or whatever. But that causes us to sometimes overlook ships that are just fun. And I think Austin might be one of those, right? We were just looking at the bow armor. The bow armor is 16 millimeters. Behind that's a 32 millimeter plate. Those are highly overmatchable. She's not going to be able to bounce large shells from certain angles. But, if you have a good game in the Austin, it's going to be the kind of game that you tell somebody about at work the next day, if you have friends that play with you at work. If not, it's going to be a game that you post in the Clyde Plays Live Discord and share with the community in there, because it's just going to be like so much fun if you pull that off. But it does seem like a fun ship. And I've played enough battles in my San Diego now, which is not a huge number, but I've played enough where I'm like, dang, maybe Austin would be a cool one to add to the list,
Yeah, I just think I think it would be fun. And I think it would be frustrating at first, but I think it would be fun. And
kind of the way Colbert is frustrating at first, talking about a research bureau ship.
Yeah.
High skill.
Colbert still stymies me, but I agree. It's a similar mechanic.
I think it's going to be similar in learning curve, if you will. Mike Tango and Frost Knight both say San Diego number one, except for Mike Tango says numbre one, slightly different. Mike Tango says guilty pleasure. I only play Austin in co-ops to farm. Shades emoji. I don't know. I think Austin's definitely a ship that I'd like to see more often in games, because I do think that's a sign of people having a good time. It's just they're playing a dumb boat that's fun.
I mean, like I would think as a DD main you wouldn't say that, but I get what you mean.
That's a fair point. Okay, talking cruisers. We'll jump to Plymouth next. Plymouth is a boat that I've had for a long time. Skada was, I don't know. I feel like one Saturday you like incepted into my mind the idea that I should buy Plymouth without a coupon. And I was like, okay. And I did it like an idiot.
I actually think that same day our clanmate Keaton bought Austin. I feel like you both did that like at the same time.
We made like two mistakes simultaneously. And I have turned around and really learned to love Plymouth. At first, I did not like it. I had trouble with it. It was very frail. The armor is very thin. It's a British light cruiser, just like it says on the tin. There was no mystery about what Plymouth was, but it's a 16-gun cruiser, AP only. It's got 10-kilometer torpedoes. It's got hydro. It's got smokes. It's got radar. It kind of has like all of the tools from the British playbook except for HE, which is not in every British ship's playbook. And I found it to be really, really, really fun and rewarding to play. Took me a few games to get my head around staying safe, using smoke when I could use smoke, trying to stop within my smoke, using islands when I can use islands, and things of that nature. Ice Cube says, does it share a hull with anything? I don't know if it's exactly the same as anything else in the game, but it kind of reminds me of like Edinburgh. So I'll pull up the ship here and I'll show it to you guys in port. And I know this is one that you've kind of eyeballed a little bit too, Skada, but this one's not in your port yet. Am I right?
No, I was going to buy this ship like a few weeks ago. I have enough steel, and I was just going to buy it without the coupon because I thought, not having had it and never really paying attention to you when you play it because you're always over in smoke doing something.
Yeah, enshrouded in smoke.
I thought in my head, this is a tier 10 Belfast. And it's got radar,
we've talked about
got
this
hydros, but then it's got torpedoes and all this stuff. And then I looked at it and I'm like, wait, it doesn't have HE. I thought it had HE. Like the whole time, I thought it had HE. And honestly, that gave me pause, and that's why I didn't buy it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's reasonable. I think a lot of players would say, I kind of want it to be a tier 10 Belfast because it's got almost everything that makes it a tier 10 Belfast, except for the HE. You can sit in your smoke and radar, and if you feel threatened, you can throw your acoustics on and dodge torpedoes and things in that smoke while your radar's running, while you're farming people with AP. But you do not have the ability to start fires like you do with Belfast. You trade that, I think, for the torpedoes. You trade that for, the other tools and things that it has. Here's a picture of the hull up close here for Ice Cube. Again, it looks similar to an Edinburgh, but I don't think it's quite the same ship. Obviously, the turrets are very different and things of that nature.
Kind of looks like Neptune.
Yeah, it's got a little bit. We can pull up Neptune as well and see. I believe I still have that ship in my port. Although I did not like Neptune, so I wanted to sell it right away. Let me grab Neptune real quick. Mike Tango says, is this any good with Captain Cunningham? I think it would probably be okay with Cunningham, but Cunningham has some skills related to fire that I think would make him a little bit better. I think Cunningham, if you put him on a cruiser, goes better on Goliath. And we can see the front of the hull here. The front of the superstructure is a little bit different, but some of it is similar.
A little
on
bit.
Neptune. A lot of these British cruisers kind of have a similar form and function, though, so it's easy to confuse them unless you're a real British naval expert.
Plymouth didn't have the flat butt.
That's what I was just going back to check. No, she's got.
I'm used to seeing on British cruisers.
She's got a pointy butt.
Actually, it has a shapely stern.
A shapely posterior.
Yeah.
So again, I think you could put a Cunningham on here and not be sad about it. But if I was putting him on a cruiser, I'd put him on Goliath or something with fire.
Yeah, I like Cunningham. I like Cunningham on Goliath, or I main Cunningham on Daring, but I think he is best.
I think he's okay on Daring too.
I think he's best mained on Goliath.
Yeah. So that is Plymouth. I recommend Plymouth to people who like British light cruisers. I don't recommend Plymouth universally to everyone in the world. And so, again, for you, if you like those British lights, if you bought Edgar because you're a fiend and you're like an Edgar, you'd probably like Plymouth. If you like Minnow, you'd like Plymouth. If you like Fiji or Belfast, Belfast 43, you'd probably like Plymouth, even though some of their ships have HE. This one doesn't. I do think that Plymouth is worth getting, but I know she's not particularly powerful. Go ahead.
When I look at Plymouth, what I think about is kind of like when you're playing through that tech line, Leander to Fiji to Edinburgh to Neptune all kind of have a very similar design feel, and then Minnow feels different to me. This to me feels more like this is like the alternate reality 10.
Tier 10.
I kind of feel like, and then you've got because it's a steel ship, you've got smoke with radar. You've got like the full sensor package in smoke with torps. these rat-a-tat, tons of barrels of this. What are they? I think they're 152s, right? Like
They are
they're just like the
152s.
British
Yep.
152s, but with that short fuse AP, so they just tear everything up. And I still want that ship. Like I still want this ship too. Like I think this ship would be a ton of fun to play. I just seriously, I thought in my head, I thought it had HE, and when I realized it didn't, I pulled back on buying it.
Yeah,
Because I just didn't realize it didn't have it.
Mike Tango did ask about Cunningham. I don't use Cunningham, but I do use Dunkirk on it. And you can see that at least in my build here, I am taking advantage of 2 of his 3 special skills, Grease the Gears and consumable enhancements to make my hydros and radar and smokes all run longer. This is the kind of ship where you're going to use those things to their full extent. So I find that to be a really valuable one. And then Grease the Gears, even though they're 152s, the rotation time isn't super fast. It's 18.8 seconds after improving it. So if you are looking to put a special commander on there, one of the Dunkirks would be a great pick. We've talked a lot about the sensors and things, and not so much about the torpedoes, although we did mention them. They're reasonable. 10 kilometers, 17,000 damage. I think you can get work done with these. You're going to be within a reasonable range because your guns are 17.7, which is longer than a lot of those lower tier British cruisers, but it's not a 25 or 23 kilometer cruiser. That's just not what she's about.
Yeah, and you can conga line those torps too. They're British style.
Yeah.
You can single fire them and do some interesting stuff with them, I'm sure.
Absolutely. So that's Plymouth. The last one we'll jump to is Vallejo, which I believe is our newest steel ship that is out. Vallejo is interesting in that she's a tier 9. Now, Wargaming kind of did away with steel ships that were below tier 10, and then we were all kind of surprised when Vallejo wound up being a steel ship. I kind of thought it might be a research bureau ship, but then I found out it didn't have hydros, and I thought, oh, it doesn't have radar or hydros. This is a weird ship for research points. It's not powerful enough. Maybe it'll just be a coal boat. And then they said, no, it's steel. And we said, why? And then they said, it's steel. Quit asking questions. No, nobody said that to me. But like, it's a steel ship with no sensors, even though it's a U.S. cruiser. It's got high DPM based loosely on the armament that you'll find on Worcester, but it has fewer guns because it's down tiered 1. A strange fan of this ship is Seraphis. Seraphis is a big fan of Vallejo. He's talked about it and played it on stream. He thinks it's an absolute hoot. I think he said in one stream that he doesn't think it's particularly competitive, and I think that's fair to say. Let me pull it up here and I'll put it up on screen. Scott, are there any numbers or stats about Vallejo that you think would be interesting to somebody who's considering buying it? I know we can't talk a whole lot about impressions because of this being a ship that we both tested a little bit, but we can talk about the numbers.
Didn't you do a video on this ship?
I did not do a video on Vallejo.
Oh, okay. I thought you did. For some reason, I thought you had did a launch video on it.
Yeah, normally I would, and this one just came at a real busy time, so I missed out on it. It wasn't because I didn't like the ship; it was just because I was busy.
To be fair, and without being legalese, I think you can actually talk about your impressions on something you don't have, but I don't know your NDA.
I think I can actually.
But anyway, just to be safe, what I would say, the gimmick on the ship, so back of the box on this is, do you want Worcester at tier 9 with 1 less turret, without radar, without hydros, but with this crazy spotter plane that's
yeah, that's right.
That's really the only other ship in game that has that kind of spotter plane is Lazo, which is like the ultra short resetting spotter plane, right? And so they model these little drones. These are like real old school drones on the fantail there, that the U.S. Navy had, and that's kind of they don't launch those for the spotter plane, but I think that's kind of what they were getting at the gimmick here, right? Those are actually, I think, were target drones, but
they were.
So the ship itself, like you can throw up your spotter plane and it recycles really fast, and it gives you quite a bit of usable range, and the shells. Mechanically, like they don't have the drag problems that like Worcester does when you're shooting really far, right? So if you look at like at a 15 kilometer base range on this ship is 15.7. So if you look at a max range, like I'm driving at 15 without spotter plane and all that stuff, and you're firing these guns, the flight time on the guns, again, another ship where the AP and the HE have different flight times, but let's say you're using the HE because you probably would be. At 15 kilometers, the flight time's 9.8 seconds. Okay, so Stalingrad's is 7.1 seconds with HE, so okay, but that's Stalingrad, right? but Plymouth that we just finished talking about, its ship flight time's 11.5 at that range. And even Austin, which is a similar kind of play style, like an HE spammy ship, its flight time is 10.1. And so there's something to be said for that. When you pop the spotter plane on this ship and it pushes your range out 17, whatever the math on it is, right? It's usable. It's a usable range where you wouldn't think it would be in an HE spammer or an American style shell, because there's magic under the dash that's making those shells get to where they need to be quicker than you would expect with like Worcester.
Yeah.
And so I think that makes it more playable.
Yeah, I was just going to throw out, I think you didn't mention Worcester's shells. You were talking about some of the other steel ships, but Worcester's are 11.8 at that same range versus the 9.8 on Vallejo. And I think because I could have made that video, I think you're right that I can talk about this ship. I didn't play a ton of matches in Vallejo. Again, I was real busy. But those ballistics are awesome compared to Seattle and Worcester. They are nice. You will hit more things, and with that spotter plane, it's sort of Lazo-like in that way, where you can actually put shots down range at that extended range and hit stuff. The DPM is quite a bit lower for Vallejo than it is for Worcester. HE DPM is 216,000 for Vallejo. Worcester's 344, 314 AP versus 500,000 AP for Worcester. But when we talk about usable DPM, the ballistics and the spotter plane really make Vallejo's guns a lot more usable than those numbers would indicate, for sure.
Yeah, when you're shooting at like a 12-kilometer range, say you're trying to get... See, that's the thing. Like, because you don't have sensors, people are going to look at you when you load in Vallejo, and they're going to think you're going to roll up on a cap like you would in a U.S. cruiser, and you're going to provide cover. And you can, if somebody else spots, you can't spot for people. You don't have sensors, right? And so that is weird. It's super weird to be in a U.S. light cruiser and have absolutely no sensors. But the flight time on shells, even at 12 kilometers, that flight time 7.2 seconds, you can, and that's it. Like, so if you want to go defend a cap, with the flight time on those shells, you can wreck destroyers. You certainly at those ranges with that comfortable flight time on the shells, more comfortable flight time, and with the reload and the shell arcs, you can work over battleships and farm up fires and stuff. So it's those things is why this is a steel ship, right? In my opinion, it's those tweaks about it are why it's a steel ship.
Yeah, I'd agree. Forrester 1980 says, "What's the fire chance?" It's 12%. On the plane, or on the ship, I mean. So 12% with that reload, which is 6.1 seconds, is not too bad. Obviously, that's a little slower than Worcester's reload. But again, your ability to actually put those shells on target is increased. The ballistics, I wouldn't say they're quite like Soviet good, but I'd want to check math to say that
no,
that's the case. They're not that good, but they are very, very manageable. I had a lot of games in this ship where I succumbed to light cruiser problems and I got destroyed. I had a couple of games where I was able to use islands incredibly. I had one game that I should have turned into a video. It was amazing, and I didn't do it, where I was bouncing shells from stuff because I was angling perfectly as I burned down battleships that were pursuing me. It was glorious. 6-figure damage in that one and stuff. Nothing too braggable, 120K or 115K or something. But you can do a lot of that battleship burning you were talking about. And that spotter plane, if you're comfortable with Lazo's spotter plane and you use that a lot, you'll be able to apply very similar skills with Vallejo. I think you can do work with it. We had a quote earlier. Who was it? Was it Jackal? Somebody said, "This is going to be a steel legend, 350,000 coal." You can quote me on that. I can't remember who said that earlier, but it is very possible that we may see that, although I don't think they'd move it away from steel for quite some time. So I think this is going to sit here as a steel ship.
I kind of agree with that. I think that with number of steel ships, people reach for 10s first.
Yeah.
I think good, bad, or indifferent, people reach for 10s first, right? But you look at the price in steel, 22,000 steel, and with a coupon, that puts this ship under, it makes it what, like 17,000 or something, like what's the math? 60. It makes it really affordable. So I don't know that. I think as what I would say in general to all people who play wargaming or play World of Warships is it doesn't all you don't always have to play tens. I do think
Yes.
there's a lot of
Yes.
hate for tier 9 right now because tier
Super
9's
ships are
tier
changing.
9 tier 9's experiencing that problem that it didn't before, where it was now where it's bottom tier, and it didn't you couldn't really be a bottom tier 9, right? You could be bottom tier with tens, but you weren't getting double, you weren't double bottom tier like every other, like eights
Yeah.
or sevens or sixes or fives can have, right? And so that makes nines feel worse than they did. But if you've got extra steel to throw around and you're into light cruiser play, I think by the numbers, I think this is an interesting ship that has some different playstyle quirks that you don't normally see in U.S. cruisers.
Yeah, I agree. I'm grabbing a YouTube video link. I'm going to grab two of them, actually. First of all, this link is that Sevastopol versus Stalingrad versus Moskva versus Petro link that I talked about earlier. And then I have a video on YouTube about matchmaking that explains why Tier 9 is going through matchmaking puberty right now. This is an older video, but it's about how fair is matchmaking. I did a survey a while ago of, I don't remember if it was 500 or 1,000 games or something. I measured a bunch of games, talked about matchmaking, and I put together a bunch of graphs that show that Tier 9 had special matchmaking, and it was much more comfortable to play at Tier 9. We know this to be true because we know how matchmaking works, but there's some graphs that show how much better off Tier 9 was at matchmaking than any of the tiers below it, except for perhaps 5, because 4s and 5s and 6s all have some protected matchmaking stuff that goes on down there as well.
Yeah,
if you're interested in that, go check that video out. Go ahead, Scott.
Nines feel amazing against sevens, and they don't feel bad against tens. Right. And so that's why there really aren't a lot of, like, in some cases some of the nines feel better than some of the tens. So and then you could fight sevens, which you were just like, now I'm really rocking rough and stuff. And so now you don't have that experience as much, because now in nines there's a Conde and Annapolis, 2 Yamagiris and a SUSA or whatever that's just beating up on you. And it makes it feel less fun. I think there's a lot of psychological pain that happens there too, though.
Oh, there definitely is, right? And we'll see how it goes. I mean, nines fighting super ships is a thing that's not going away, right? And so it's something we're going to experience, and Vallejo's going to suffer from that. So that's a reason why somebody might not go for Vallejo. Vallejo cost, you talked about its cost earlier, 22,000 steel. That's about what a tier 10 cruiser costs with coupon. So if you can afford, maybe you can't afford one of the other tier 10s, it might be, I could see this being some people's first steel ship. I don't know that I would recommend it as your first steel ship, but I could see people using that logic, like, oh, cool, it's the first one I can afford, let's get it. I could also see people buying it without a coupon because it's cheap enough. Go ahead.
I don't remember the last time I saw one.
They're not popular. They're not popular.
I'm going to look at the numbers just for my own edification right now, but like, I saw them a lot when it was in test, and I don't feel like I've seen them a whole heck of a lot since. Oh my gosh! So this ship hasn't been out a real long time, but on the North American server, according to WoW's numbers, there's 915 battles registered in Vallejo and random.
Are you serious? That is a very low number. Give me any other tier 9 cruiser.
Let's see.
Like, what's the next lowest one? Yeah.
Dalian, which is a Pan-Asian tier 9 premium that came out when that line launched in February. So it was a tier 9, and the only way you could buy this ship is dubs, right? So that sucks.
Yeah.
There's 16,000 battles in that.
So like 20 times as many battles, 18 times as many battles.
Here's another similar ship, Tulsa, right? The tier 9. Now, Tulsa's available for coal?
Yes, I think Tulsa's available for coal.
Tulsa's been out about a year now. It came out before Christmas last year. Tulsa there's 47,000 battles in that on NA. So Vallejo hasn't been out very long.
Still,
and it
900
doesn't even
feels very low.
915 battles. Now that said, the stats on it are obscene because the guys who have 150,000 steel they never spend.
Yeah.
The are all those clans that you see and you go, oh man, matchmaking. Those guys have this ship, and the average win rate on NA is just shy of 60%. The average damage is 85k.
Those are pretty good numbers because of the players who are sitting around with that. These Unicum players who are going to be the early adopters, right?
Yeah. I'm surprised it has less than 1,000, but I thought about it for a second there, and I thought I don't remember the last time I saw one.
They're not common. And I think this is going to be a slow uptick.
So Steel coming soon to Steel Legends. 350,000 coal. I don't know how much coal they'd sell it for if they did that with it. I think that would be kind of sad if they did that to it.
It would be.
But boy, howdy, yeah. I mean, that's why those other ships ended up. That's why Flint and Nustra became Steel Legends. People weren't buying them for steel.
Do you think?
Flint had been around forever, but
do you think Vallejo is like the most indie ship? Like, you roll into a match, people are like, what's a Vallejo? And you're like, oh, Vallejo. Yeah, it's a US cruiser with no sensors. You probably never heard of it. You know,
I mean, it's the most indie ship according to this as far as cruisers go. For tier 9 cruisers. I mean, the next closest tier 9 cruiser is the Takahashi, which is the new Japanese tech tree ship that you only have if you lucked into it whaling in the bundles. Yeah. And there's still 40. That's been out for a month, right? You've been able to get that for a month now, just shy of a month, right? And there's already 4,200 battles registered in it.
I mean, it's certainly more available to people than Vallejo, that's for sure. But yeah, that is crazy, just how few battles are available or have been played on NA.
Vallejo may be the most indie. It may be the most
hipster of the cruisers.
Let's see. Because you probably never heard of it.
I preferred the first album.
You don't know anybody that has it.
Vallejo's the name of my new band. It's going to be dope. Snow Mongoose has an opinion about IJN Lights.
Trash.
I think that's our wrap up for cruisers, though, guys. Yeah, let's move on to our final category, I think. Yeah, cruisers and destroyers. I blended them together. I know these are very wacky ships to put together, but look, they all fit on one page. How cool. Yeah. Somebody earlier said, before we even got into the first ship, said, I'm going to use my coupon on Ragnar. Of course you are. Ragnar is a very powerful ship. I like Ragnar, although it took me some time to like it because she doesn't move as fast as I want. She's not quite as maneuverable as I was hoping she would be. I do love the guns. I loved them so much they nerfed them a little bit. It's got radar, of course. It's got a lot of hit points if you build for them. Ragnar's really tough, and of course we see it in a lot of competitive modes. We see it in clan battles at certain tiers. We certainly see it in things like King of the Sea and tournament play, absolutely. So definitely Ragnar, I think, is an easy recommendation because it's just universally understood to be a powerful ship. I don't think it's powerful in everybody's hands, but I also don't think Ragnar is beyond the capacity of a player to learn how to use, right? I think your average player or maybe your average plus player can definitely take a crack at Ragnar and get some work done with it. And I think an excellent player or a really good player can take it and really just be a murderous surgeon removing ships like tumors from the enemy team. I don't know if you have anything to add about Ragnar, maybe your experience fighting against Ragnar or anything like that, Skada, with your kind of opinion on this particular ship and its cost of 27,000 steel.
I've thought about buying it. I have Smallland, which I do not believe plays the same, but scratches my itch for pan-European radar DDs.
Overpowered turbo ships, yeah.
And then I almost, this is another one where this summer when I was like, or a couple, not this summer, like last month when I was like, I'm going to buy Plymouth. Oh, it doesn't have HE. And then I was like, oh, you know what? I'm going to get Ragnar. I bet I'd have fun in that. And then I didn't. I was like, meh, I'm going to wait. It just, I like torpedoes on my destroyers. And so not having that on there.
I didn't even mention that, but yes.
Yeah, the lack of torpedoes is kind of a turn off to me. Even if it had like mediocre Tromp torpedoes or like Forrest Sherman torpedoes, just give me something. I might like it a little bit better, but I don't have the ship. It doesn't super interest me. It is not fun. It isn't super fun to play against, although, in most of the DDs at tier 10, you're going to outspot this thing by a country mile, and then it's going to radar you if it wants to.
A country kilometer. We're using European, international measurements.
Well, it's like 1.5, right? I'm thinking like 6 kilometer to conceal on most tier 10 DDs, and this thing's like 7.5, right? So, so that's closer to anyway. But you don't want to take the fight with it because its guns are really good at slapping DDs. Those what are they, like 152s, and they reload all the time. And there's a bunch of there's 4 barrels or something, and it does a bunch of damage. So I get why people like this boat. And this is kind of one where I was like, yeah, I'm probably going to get that boat pretty soon. And then they announced that new pan-European destroyer tech tree. I was
just going to bring that up.
Where there's going to be a bunch of tech tree boats that have radar, smoke, and these kind of guns.
Whoa.
So why would I get
Mogador hulls with radar and smoke and...
Mogador hulls.
What is this? Mogador.
Yeah, so why would I spend steel on this thing? It ain't special no mo.
Well, that's the thing that's really interesting about Ragnar right now, is I still think she's strong. I still think she's capable. She's not the ship she was last week, right? She still is. But we're about to get a new tech line that goes, what if we Ragnar up a Mogador? And they're like, what? Of course we should buy that instead. And it's going to be in the tech tree. Now, nobody knows how those ships are going to come out. They could be very powerful. They could be very weak. They could be something in the middle. I think they're going to be middle to powerful. We shall see. When we look at all of the pan-Euro destroyers in the game, we know destroyers are very popular on the European servers. And obviously they're very popular at my house because I like destroyers. But they're very popular on the European servers. And then we look at the pan-Euro line, and we have Holland, which is generally regarded as a good ship. We've got Småland, which is terrifies people all over the globe, and we think of as a very powerful ship. We've got Ragnar, which is very powerful and very strong. Friesland has its own little neighborhood that it is the bully of. We've got a lot of strong pan-Euro ships, and I think that market is a market that has an appetite for these ships. And I wouldn't put it past Wargaming to produce another line of competent to competent plus versions of pan-Euro destroyers, because I think they'll be popular on the European servers. They'll certainly be popular with destroyer fans around the world. For me, I think there's a likelihood that's going to be a strong line of ships. And then do we wind up in a Yamato versus Shikishima scenario, or an Incomparable versus St. Vincent scenario with Ragnar, which to me right now sounds almost impossible to imagine, Yeah,
I mean, you look at existing ships that you named, and you would say, man, a lot of those are really powerful ships. Even if you move down that tech line, Oostergotland or Uland, those ships are fun ships too. Those tech ships,
they are.
But say you're like, you know what though, I don't want to play that because there's no smoke. Well, what if
we just gave you smoke for no reason?
What if we did a line split where you got smoke? But what if we give you radar too?
Yeah.
Then it's like, oh, well, where do I sign up for that? Well, you sign up for it in early access, probably sometime around March. Or actually, I don't know with the pan.
Yeah.
I don't know when those are going to come out, because we also had that new cruiser line named. So, but yeah, sometime in patch 12, sometime next year, we're going to give you a bunch of weird, I don't think they're Swedes. It's like Polish boats and all kinds of weird things that they're putting in.
There's a Turkish one. There's some from Croatia. I'm imagining that, I'm picturing a scene in my head where a guy in Croatia, I don't know what a Croatian accent sounds like, so I'm not going to try to do one, but where this guy sits down and goes, "Dear Wargaming," he's writing a letter with an actual pencil on a desk. "Dear Wargaming, I would like there to be more ships from the Mediterranean area, and I would like them to be overpowered Mogador boats, and I would pay for them and give you money or whatever." Puts it in an envelope, mails it. It goes to the Wargaming headquarters. Chegg opens it up and says, "You know what? We got to get this to the dev team." And then 6 months later, here we are.
I don't think Chegg opens the mail. I think that's one of Jules' ancillary duties when she's not making those patch videos.
When Jules is not doing the videos.
Hi, I'm Jules, and now I open the mail. Oh, they want a new line.
I would watch a YouTube video of Jules opening mail that people sent to Wargaming. That would be hilarious. How
does Mrs. Clyde feel about that opinion?
Well, not that kind of video. Take it easy. But no, that's hilarious. I just wonder what kind of random ass mail they would get. That's actually the part that's entertaining. It could
I
be
think they just get a lot of people
Seraphis
mailing them
opening the
asking
mail.
for torpedoes. People just send a mail wanting to buy torpedoes.
Here's a
That's what they get.
self-addressed stamped duffel bag. Please fill it with torpedoes and send it back to my house. Anyway, but no, I am really genuinely curious about what that new line is going to look like and how it's going to stack up against the, the strong pedigree we already have of strong pan-Euro boats. Is this going to be the first line for that country that's a dud, or are they going to be all amazing, just like everything that's already come out for this line?
Mm-hmm.
Good question.
One other random thing I'll throw out about Ragnar before we move on.
Yeah, go ahead.
One of those really hard to get camos exists for Ragnar, and it is so cool looking.
Oh gosh, yeah. Hang on, I'm gonna go find it because it is rad.
It's probably, what is it, like ranked tokens or like hurricane, typhoon, badass tokens, or
it's a list of things that I'm not allowed to get.
But it's a really cool looking camo that I really dig on it.
Oh, it's so rad. It's 10. Is it 10 ranked tokens? Oh my gosh. Let me switch over here. Can I show it in the port? Of course I can. This is unholily beautiful. That
camo is so cool looking.
Like, I need to. Fan. There's no way I will ever get this because I don't play those modes that sweatily. So kudos to anybody who is able to dress their Ragnar up in this thing.
If you've got Ragnar and you've got that camo, you put that on it and you go into any match and you immediately pop the Immigrant Song from Led Zeppelin. And you just go straight looking for somebody to shoot up in radar, and you just have a good time. That camo's cool.
Oh, it's so good. It is so good, dude.
I've never seen it in the wild, Ice Cube, but I've seen it up close and personal. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'd like to see it in the wild as well, but only if that player's on my team, because that means there's some ranked god or something, and I don't need to fight against them. Skada, I'm going to throw you into the chipper shredder that has to talk about FDR, because I don't know about it. The one steel carrier, Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Franklin Roosevelt was a real steel ship. It's a second ship built of the Midway class, named after Franklin Roosevelt, posthumously. Oddities of this ship versus Midway are that its air wings are crazy weird planes that I think were built but like weren't really used, right? There are these like crazy planes that were in development. This is one of those like World War II 1947 kind of ships, or more like in the early 50s, but in reality this ship would have had like jets on it. It wouldn't have had these crazy prop planes. So,
right, because of the timing of things. Yeah.
When FDR came out, it was like undisputably like the trolliest CV in my opinion.
It was horrible. As a DD main, it was horrible.
It launches these wings of these planes, and they are super slow. Like the planes don't get out of but there's so many of them. And when you go to like say the Torp bombers, which are my favorite thing on it, the planes are slow. They have a lot of health, right? The planes have a gob of health, 3,500 health. The squadron is like 14 of these planes, right? So there, and an attack is only 2. And so ostensibly you could just attack forever with one squadron, and they have a ton of health. Now you can't because they get shot down, and they have this insane refractory period where after you drop, it's like 20 odd seconds before you can go again. It's really long. So you have to know about like dropping with it and then getting out of AA bubbles and looping around and taking these long, fantastic voyages. And that's part of like why it's, maybe not as overpowered as people think it is. But the Torp bombers are the best thing in the world because when you drop them, it's these 2 planes go down and the approach is really long, and you can do like a 90-degree turn on the approach and still line up your torps. And when you release, it puts 8 torpedoes in the water. And so a lot of people refer to it as like, like the flying shimikaze.
Yes.
Because it just vomits torps in the water. And in the original version, the spread on those torpedoes was so powerfully tight that I don't know if you could really do it on a big cruiser, but on a tier 10 battleship like a Yamato or a Kurfürst, you could easily land all 10 while they were in motion if you dropped the right way. You would just dunk, 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 just right down the side of that ship, just for a mountain of damage. The torps, the torpedoes on it only do like 4,200 damage a piece. But you're putting 8 of them on target. So eventually, this ship took a nerf,
And
where
this was played in clan battles. I think pre-nerf, or was that post-nerf?
No, that was pre-nerf.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I hated that
yeah,
entire season
yeah.
of clan battles as a destroyer player. It was disgusting. That
Yeah,
is all. Back to you.
it was rough, and it took a nerf where they actually, specifically to the torpedo drop, where they widened the pattern. It's hard. It's much harder to get all 8 on a big battleship now. I'm not super good at CVs, but if I mess around with this ship, I may only land like 7 torps, which is like such a bummer
Scott,
because
or go ahead.
used to only at 8, and you're like only get 7 now.
Oh,
And then it has like it's all the same planes all the time. It has rocket
Before we move on
planes.
from the planes, though, Fuzzers has an interesting question in chat, which is, will FDR be majorly nerfed with that AA rework if that goes through? Now, you were talking about how the planes are kind of slow and they do get shot down. Do you think the way the large squadron size with the small attacking flights, do you think that'll have a problem with that AA rework as proposed?
What do you think?
Well, let me talk about the AA rework a little bit. I think I'm forming an opinion here. That's a good question. So how many squadrons does it come with? Is it like 6 or 8?
So like when you take the torpedo planes out, it's 7.
Okay, 7. So you've got 7 attacking flights, 14 planes total. The way that AA rework is going to change things, if you guys aren't aware, we need to do a news video about this, but the schedule just has not allowed. We'll talk about this probably on Tuesday's stream, maybe on Saturdays. But the way that AA damage is applied right now is there's a line of your aircraft right here along the bottom of your screen, and it starts shooting down the ones all the way on the right, and it just shoots them down in order. And the proposed change, at least part of it, is that it'll choose a random plane to apply the damage to, rather than choosing just the one at the end. And what that means is that your attacking flights will come in, and you won't necessarily always get off one really strong full airplaned attack with your first strike. As they're shooting down these planes, your first strike remains impervious to that damage because it's killing the ones at the back of the list, in other words. With the number of squadrons that it has, the other part of the adjustment to AA that is being talked about is kind of interesting, because what will happen is you, as the aircraft carrier captain, will be able to hit the F button to send back a single attacking flight, not all of the airplanes in the squadron. So if you have a attacking flight that has one damaged plane in it, or it's missing a plane, you can just send that plane back. I actually think it'll be okay. I think it'll survive that relatively well. You will have to send some planes back early, but I think because the squadrons are so small, or the attacking flights are so small, it'll work out nicely, because you're not going to have to send back 3 planes because 2 got shot down. You're just going to send 1 back. So I think FDR may survive that better than most. Now, I think, Skada, you're not free to speak about that because of testing reasons. So I'm going to have to, provide just my opinion there, and that'll leave the folks in chat to decide their own thoughts on that. Guys, if you have thoughts, though, let us know what you think about the effects on FDR, especially if you have an FDR and you do play it.
Yeah, Ice Cube, if you only had 1 plane, it would only drop 4 torpedoes.
That is correct.
That's how it works, yeah.
Yeah. So you could still drop 4 torps if you thought that plane would survive the approach. If you don't think that, then you can send that plane back, and maybe your next squadron has 2 planes and you can get the full 8 dropped. But when you hit F, you don't send all the planes back, which is kind of a buff and a nerf to aircraft carriers, if you ask me. My opinion only, of course. Or go ahead, Scott. Did you have something else to say?
No, I was just going to talk about the other ordnance, right? So go ahead. When it launches its bombers, it's always the same planes. It's always these Sky Pirates, but so it's always 7x2 squadron setup. So you're always flying out with these huge squadrons. The bombers drop HE bombs. Each plane drops 4. So when you do an attack flight with the bombers, you drop 8. They're not really like a super aggressive dive bomber. They're kind of more like if you've used the Mitchells off of like Hornet. They're not quite a flat, like a British style carpet bomber, but they don't do like a hard dive bomb either. So they're pretty easy to use. And you drop 8 bombs with a huge fire chance, 60% fire chance. Each bomb does 10,600 damage with 64 millimeters of pen. And so the people love the people always talk about the torpedoes on this thing because there's so many of them, but the bombers beat you up too. And then it has attack planes that are rocket planes that, again, 7x2, but each plane in an attack squadron launches 26 rockets. So you would launch, 52 rockets in a strike.
Jeez, yeah.
And HE rockets, each rocket does 1,650 damage, 5% fire chance, but they pen 32 millimeter. And at tier 10, that's important because that's one of those threshold numbers where you're going to get full HE pens on a lot of cruisers. You're going to get full HE pens on like some battleships, like French battleships, like Bourgogne and stuff. The problem is that the machine gun period on those rocket planes is like 45 minutes. It's like they are strafing forever.
It's 2.25 battles of just
if you can, and it's a huge blob of rockets.
Yeah.
It's not like it's tightly dropping 52 rockets on a quarter. It's a massive wad of rockets. I go for those planes last if I'm messing around with FDR, just because I usually go for the rocket planes last, though. Let's be honest. Like unless I'm in,
I tend to as well.
Unless I'm in something like Aquila or something that doesn't have that crazy long machine gun thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that's FDR's planes, and everybody when FDR came out, they've dealt with that because God, they're not shooting any planes down. The planes have so much durability. You build a captain for protecting the planes and adding plane armor and adding hit points and all the things you can do, and the planes are just flying tanks. They're not in a hurry though, and you can deplane an FDR if the FDR captain isn't careful and eats a bunch of flak or goes into multiple abe. If you go to drop a bunch of Minos and Smolensk's and stuff, you're gonna have a bad time. You're gonna lose a bunch of planes.
Just a succession of those light cruisers. Yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna lose them on the attack run. You're gonna lose them on the backside because they're not in a hurry to get away. And then you've got to get out of that AA bubble. And a lot of those planes, the AA bubbles go out to 6. And so then you can't drop again. You got to get out of that AA bubble, then cut hard back if you want to drop them again and come back in from outside because the refractory period is so long that you can't just do like a turnaround. Yeah. You really have to fly away. It's almost, you kind of have to play them different. You really have to have like speed boost ready on after the drop to get your planes the heck out of there.
Rather than on the approach. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of, sometimes it's frustrating to play it, but it's other times you land 8 torpedoes on a battleship and it's hilarious. So I don't think FDR is what it was when it came out. It's been out a year and a half, probably. I don't think it's as powerful as it was when it came out. I don't feel like I see as many FDRs as I used to. I definitely think that
don't see it like you used to.
I definitely think that USS United States at tier 11 is more powerful.
I was going to bring that up too. There's a lot of tier 10 carriers to choose from, right?
Yeah.
And then of course tier 11s. We're going to have Secure U, Eagle, and United States. And then we've got things like Malta that's out. Malta's cheap and hella good. I just said hella, I think it's 2008, but
yeah, but I agree with you. And that was something I was thinking about earlier. We were talking about the cost of steel ships and how hard it is to get steel ships. Cost of research bureau ships, how hard it is to get research bureau ships. Generally, coal ships are easier to get. You earn coal every day. That doesn't mean that coal ships are worse than steel or research bureau ships. And in some cases, some coal ships are better. Malta is very good.
Yeah.
Look at ships that have been removed from the game. A lot of those were coal ships to begin with. Thunder, Smolensk. People think about, oh man, those ships are so powerful, man. They're not in the game anymore. They weren't a hard to get currency. Part of the reason they're not in the game anymore is because so many people could get them.
Because it was easy. Yeah. Popularity.
But they're also very powerful ships. So there isn't always a lot of logic behind, is it steel? Is it coal? Is it research bureau? Sometimes I swear they probably spin a wheel and throw darts.
In terms of how to decide what camo,
or throw I don't know what they knives or vodka bottles or whatever they have laying around, right? And I think sometimes that might be how they decide what currency something's going to be sold for.
They've got that wheel from IKEA at the NA office that barely works, or the EU office that barely works.
Yes, that's the one exactly. So, but yeah, FDR. If you're a CV main and you want a steel carrier, they sell FDR.
That's the one.
I bought FDR without a coupon before I even knew what I was doing on how to play carriers.
Yes, you did.
Because we were getting beat up by them in clans. And in fact, I wasn't the first guy in our clan to did it. Another guy in our clan did it the week before me. When he had enough steel to do it, we both did that so we could try to play it in clans that season to just give us some kind of fighting chance. And neither of us knew what the heck we were doing. I don't
That's how
have
oppressive that ship was when it was new. Now that was
yeah,
pre-nerf, but it's still
yeah, and I don't have a ton of matches on FDR and randoms.
yeah.
FDR is a ship. Somebody mentioned earlier that Austin is their co-op farming ship de
Yeah.
jour.
Yep. Mike Tango said
FDR is a ship that I have ruined co-ops for co-op mains, because I'll tell you, if there's a mission for torpedo hits, you'll find me that day in co-op using the FDR to just drill torpedo hits into stuff over and over and over again, because it's quick and easy to do. If there's a mission for spots and torpedo hits, I'm going to be definitely there doing that. But I have played it a little bit in randoms. I tend not to go out to tier 10 and CVs and randoms. I'm timid. I feel comfortable playing tier 8 CV right now. I don't really like to go to tier 10. Ships like FDR and Immelman and Malta make it easier because they are better than your average bear, or they have some feature that make it better for me at least. But
yeah.
Yeah, it's available for steel. It's still pretty good.
You can
and
get
it's kind of an interesting play style.
You can get any carrier you want for steel as long as it's FDR, basically, right? And she is beautiful. I was just showing some. I just panned across it again for the people at home. She, as you mentioned, a real steel ship. I'm not the biggest CV fan in World Warships, although I do play them on occasion. But I do like aircraft carriers in real life. I think it's an incredible construction, and this is a cool one to have in your little pixel boat collection. So if you have everything else, certainly that's a reason to get it. But steel is such a rare commodity. I'd make sure that that's what you really wanted before I went and spent my steel for it. But yeah, I do think that FDR is still a very viable ship, but like you said, a lot of people don't play them, and there are new choices that are making this a more difficult pick. When we look at those super ships, we look at Malta, we look at Nakamov. Jackal mentioned Super Nakamov coming eventually, right? So we know these ships are on their way, or they're already here, and we can pick them up right now. So that is FDR. Now, I'd like to walk through a little bit of a discussion on Z42 or Z42. This is a new steel ship. I have not played it. It is new. It is not available to me, but it is coming, and it is available for steel. I've made a special display for it, which really all I did is I went and I grabbed the stats at launch time for the Z42. Now, there has been an adjustment to this ship. I did not forget. We're going to talk about that too. But this is what they initially announced when they announced Z42. I put some red boxes around numbers that I think are interesting. There are other numbers that are on this page that are also interesting, but I did want to highlight a few of them. Number one, it's got a main battery of 10 guns that are 105 millimeter guns. Now, you guys might know that there are 105 millimeter secondaries on a lot of ships in the battleship lines for the German line, as well as the destroyers like T-22 that has the 105 millimeter guns, but it's not a particularly popular main battery gun on that many ships in World Warships. Firing range was going to be 12.6 kilometers. Very high velocity shells, at least their initial velocity, 900 meters per second. I'm not sure what the shell drag is going to be on this yet, but we'll find out someday. At announcement time, the reload time was 3.1 seconds, and remember that number because we're going to talk about it. The torpedoes themselves are at announcement time were 10 kilometers, 18,400 damage. Benzie, we are going to talk about those. Yes, I can send this to you, and I can send you the information about the new patch as well. Just one moment. Talking about maximum speed, 36 knots, which is pretty similar to other German destroyers. So not a particularly fast boat. She's okay. And then when we look at the consumables, we've got things like short burst smoke generator, and this is shorter than we normally see on German destroyers. The Z52 has a 60 or 70 second smoke. These are 40-second smokes, kind of like what you'd experience on Cossack or the other Tech Tree British destroyers. So, shorter duration, but lots of smokes available. They said there's 6 charges. We've got a hydroacoustic search slot. This one is a 6 kilometer hydroacoustic module. And then what happened after this is they announced some changes to the ship after doing some testing. Let me see if I can find the Z42 numbers, and I'll send those over to you guys. It looks like Ice Cube tried to send them, but Ice Cube doesn't have permissions to post links. So thank you, Ice Cube. Initial stats are here. So that's the numbers I just read off to you. And then we had some adjustments to stats. And I'm going to post that blog post as well, although we haven't talked about these just yet. These are the adjustments to Z42. And I put a colon in there instead of a dash. My apologies. You guys can go to those links if you'd like. And let me pull up those adjustments. Then what we saw was a series of adjustments. These are mostly nerfs. There's a very, very, very small buff in here, but most of these things are nerfs. Z42 went from having a reload time of 3.1 seconds to a reload time of 4.5 seconds. The main battery, or excuse me, the HEDPM there went from 232,000, which was nearly as good as the #1 ship at tier, which is Friesland, which has 233,000 damage for its HEDPM, down
That's
to
not a tier.
Oh, you're right. That's a 10. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. What is the #1 at 10? #1 destroyer. Good job, Skada. Fact checking. #1 destroyer at tier 10 is Marceau, 253,000. The closest one to this ship is Haragumo, 240,000. So it would have been a little bit lighter than a Haragumo's HEDPM. And then
that's how they announced it, right? They said it was.
That's how they announced it is 232. Yeah.
No, but they talked about it being
a
Haragumo.
Yeah. Yeah, that is true. 160K is going to be like Yu Yang is the closest tier 10 that has the same DPM to what they've adjusted it to. So just for anybody kind of trying to give you guys an idea of what the damage would have been like and what it's going to be like. So it would have been about 8K shy of Haragumo, and now it's about 2K shy of Yu Yang. I put tier 9 numbers in here. I don't know why I had tier 9 in my head when I put this together. Apologies for that, you guys. Then we saw the adjustments to concealment. And when we look at the concealment, it went from a potentially max fully built 5.87 conceal down to a 6.16 conceal. Let me see if we can take a look at some concealment numbers in here as well, since I got to drum those babies up. So it was going to be 7.25, which is about the same as Yu Yang or Vampire 2, a little bit worse than those ships. And it's now going to be 7.6, which is exactly the same as Smallland. So it's going to be able to build into the same concealment as Smallland, which I think is 6 or 6.1.
Yeah,
actually, I did the math. 6.16. I did the math there for a Z42. So anyway, we see big adjustments to the main battery and the DPM. We see big adjustments to the detection, where it's getting worse. And then the torpedoes went from 10 kilometers to 7.5 kilometers. They went from 66 knots to 62 knots. They did get a small buff, and this is the only buff on the sheet. Detectability of the torpedoes went from 1.8 to 1.3, and then the damage went way down from 18.4 to 13.7. 13.7 is a very common damage for German torpedoes, so that's not a number that should surprise us. But that's what we're seeing. Mike Tango, Angel of Death, thanks for hanging out, guys. I hope you had a great time with us on stream. These are a lot of nerfs across a lot of different attributes of this ship, and she's not as cool as advertised, unfortunately. I was very excited about Z42 when we first saw all of these numbers. I will say a lot of people looked at those numbers and said, Wargaming, you're going to have to nerf that. And Wargaming came around and they've nerfed that. Now, the ship is still in testing. There are still changes that could be coming in the future. We could see some adjustments which would come back in the form of buffs to change these numbers. Right now, though, this is the latest that we have about the ship. I am surprised to see buffs to concealment and torpedoes and main battery. That is an aggressive slap with the ugly stick. You know, in my mind, I would have been fine with the torpedo changes if they didn't screw with the detect and the guns, or I might have been better with the detect changes if they wouldn't have messed with the torpedoes, that kind of thing. But all three of these is a pretty aggressive adjustment. We got a few comments in chat here as well. Ice Cube says, this is worse HEDPM than Regolo. True, Regolo is going to be really close to its target and probably able to hit it and have smokes to get away and some speed. Z42 is going to be trying to do farming from range, but with very short smokes. I think that could be challenging to do depending on the velocity, the ability to get over islands. I'm interested to see, you know, kind of how 42 performs with geography, with smoke, and against different targets. But she's also not going to be able to be as stealthy as we thought she was going to be earlier, unfortunately. I'm a Jackal says, murdered with the Nerf bat. Oof, gross. Angel of Death said, mega hit with the Nerf bat. Hilda said, they just need to reduce the cooldown. Oh, you're talking FDR, sorry. Then FDR would be great again. Yeah, that's true. Anyway, I'm a little bit not worried about Z42. I'm a little less excited about it than I was when they first announced it. We'll have to see how she comes through testing. You know, Scott, I think you may have played this ship, so I don't think you're allowed to share opinions and thoughts there. Certainly we can speak to numbers and things on the dev blog, of course, but any thoughts that you're able and willing to share at the moment, or is there not much that you can say at the moment? I don't know that you have a lot of freedom here, so feel free to say no thank you if that's the answer. But
I can agree with the sentiment of humanity that plays the game that, boy, those seem like a lot of nerfs.
Yeah.
Based on what they showed there. And I can agree with the comment that Angel of Death made that he was disappointed and poised to get it. Earlier in the stream, I talked about how I'll probably spend my coupon when it rolls back in the next week on Mecklenburg, let's say. That
unrelated comment, of course.
Before this dev blog, like a lot of people, I was probably thinking, I'm going to sit on that coupon and that steel until this ship comes out. This ship looks like it's going to be fun.
Yeah. I agree with that thought. I think I might still wait to see what happens in the rest of the testing period, you know, and you know, just like anybody else, we can all watch the dev blog and see what changes. Because I'm in no rush to buy it's not like I have a second ship that I'm super excited about. This was going to be my next steel ship, absolutely. Now that's been called into question, right? And by these changes, we'll see. She may bounce back. I don't know that I see a lot of ships get a tug of war with adjustments. You know, a lot of times they go tink, 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 just in one direction. But this was a big swing in adjustment.
Yeah, I would say that I was very excited about it when it was announced as a steel ship because even not necessarily the fact that they're saying, oh, it's a German or whatever, but it was a steel destroyer that looked more like the kind of destroyers I enjoy playing. And like, I don't have Ragnar because it's not really a playstyle I want from destroyers.
Right.
And so this was a concealed destroyer with torpedoes and guns and some fun things it could do that made it look like a ship that I would like. And so that's why I was excited for it. But yeah, the changes that they announced the other day, really, for me, it's less about the gun DPM. It's really about that torpedo change. Because when I look at this now, I can go, Mom, I want to get Z42, and Mom says, you've got Z42 at home, and I have Z35 already. And Z35 is a tier 8 premium
Z35
German
or Z42.
German DD with crap torpedo range, British smokes, hydros, and rat-attack guns at tier 8. And so I know how that boat plays. And that play style doesn't intrigue me for steel.
Not for steel, it doesn't. Yeah.
No.
Agreed.
And so like
I like that boat, but not for steel.
Yeah, right. And so like what they've done based on what I'm seeing from this, if this is the design language, if the design language is tier 10 steel Z35,
yeah.
Because 7.5 kilometer torpedoes at tier 10 don't work for me. That's
not
especially
good enough.
Especially with a 6.2 conceal. That's just too tight of a margin of error with everybody and their dog having radars, including Ragnars and Smalllands and a whole line of pan-Euro DDs coming.
Oh, yeah.
And now I've got these slower, crap damage torps that I can launch at something, and I like torpedoing things with destroyers more than I like gun farming. So, yeah, it's just this stuff is disheartening, and hopefully, as it progresses through testing, who knows how long it'll be in tests, folks. You got to remember, there's a lot of times in this game where you'll see a ship get announced. Ship gets announced, and on the you get that stream, that EU stream, the week before. In fact, it didn't happen today. Normally, the EU stream a week before a patch, they announce a bunch of shit, and then when the patch hits, that's when the new thing goes into testing. And then you can almost set your watch by how in a couple months you're probably going to see that appear in game, right? It's going to become available, right? Because they have a pretty good battle rhythm to how they release stuff. But sometimes boats go into test and never return, or they're there for like Sevastopol, the cruiser Sevastopol,
for like 10 months or something, 9 months. A year. It was a long time.
It was in test for a very long time. You can go back and look through dev blogs and see how long something like that was in test, right? Yeah. And sometimes ships go into test forever. And so you never know. This might be a ship that they've made this adjustment. They've decided this is how they want it to play, and it's going to go through a testing pass, and you may see it enter the game in a few months. Or you may see a lot of changes to it, and it may take longer. Or they may decide, this doesn't really work. They really do. When things go into test, and you see testers playing ships with you on the normal server, they really do collect that data, and then that's how they start figuring out how they're going to nerf and buff things, right? How does it perform in randoms against the player base? What I would say about this nerf is. How long ago was this ship announced?
Not that long ago.
This is like the spinning doors on a saloon, like flapping back and forth really fast. How quickly they nerfed this thing.
It was announced
based on release date, right?
It was announced on the 2nd, and they posted these changes on the 30th. Now these changes appeared on the public test server half a week before this article went up or something, a few days.
There was WoW's Gamer blog, which is a great site. They had data mined this. I don't even think they data mined it. I think they just went on to PTS.
I think it just went on PTS. That was where
and they could have data mined it from PTS, and that's where they had to have data mined it. But the other day they posted it. I don't remember what day it was. I remember pointing it out to you. I said, "Hey, it was on November 30th." They posted. No, that was after the dev blog, but they had posted an article after data mining this change a few days before it was announced in a dev blog. That's also kind of weird. We normally don't see that happen with this game. Usually, the dev blog comes out before these things happen. So but
they posted it on just to be nerdy about this. They posted that on November 24th, so 6 days ahead of the dev blog coming out. That's crazy.
Yeah, and if they data mined that off PTS at that point, there was some other stuff that weren't steel ships that took the nerf in that patch as well. Yeah, and that data was probably also present then. Maybe, I don't know, but this one, when you look at this ship and how quickly that changed. There was a lot of fervor, a lot of excitement for this ship when it was announced.
A lot of excitement. It might have led to some of the changes too. And they were like, "Oh no, what did we do?"
It took roughly 20 odd days before they yanked the rug out from under that. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens with it.
German,
but we'll see what happens with it. It could still be a lot of fun. It could still be an interesting play. But I'm not gonna wait now and hold on to coupons and steal. I'm just gonna continue my normal progression of when the coupon's available, I'll buy a ship.
Buy something, yeah.
Because I'm a collector, so like I said, I've got plenty of steel ships that are disappointments, and I I'll probably continue that. And just keep plugging away at it. That's just kind of my battle rhythm on getting steel ships.
So we got a couple of good comments over here. Grant Wise says The player base, stop releasing OP ships. Wargaming, let me nerf this OP ship for you that is still in testing. Player base, no, not like that. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of people in the player base and they're all shouting different things at the same time. It's just like Price is Right. Sometimes Wargaming listens to the wrong people.
Yeah. If you take it as its own case, it's pretty interesting how quickly they nerfed it and how hard it got nerfed.
It's an aggressive nerf.
Where the community is super disappointed is the dev blog that it was announced in announced buffs to submarines and
yes.
hybrid battleship planes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Airplanes and submarines took buffs, big buffs. And every surface ship that was in that dev blog, including the Steel Destroyer, took giant nerfs. And so that, you've already got a fan base in the game that feels like that they're getting stuck in all the time if they, wanting to play surface ships in this game. And so when something like that happens, it's just insult to injury.
Well, especially because there are 7 or 8 different buffs and nerfs in that article, and they are broken up exactly as you described. All of the, traditional battleships, cruisers, destroyers are nerfed. The submarines and hybrid battleships are buffed, and it is kind of interesting to see that. Whether or not that's sinister and not just data driven is a whole nother conversation. I'll let you guys formulate your own opinions there, but that is a funny thing to see, and it doesn't warm the heart very much. You know what I mean?
I don't think people look at that and it's human nature to look for patterns in that, and maybe was that sinister. To me, it's all Hanlon's razor. I'm not gonna attribute any of it to malice, which could just be attributed to just stupidity or just being oblivious. It's just, this is the things we're doing, and whap, and here it looks. When you put that together, it looks like, geez, really twist the knife. Yeah, but in reality, it just is what it is.
Yeah. Angel of Death says maybe with this I think with the outrage they will buff it a bit. They might, and we'll see. And Hulikajude said, didn't they adjust for Sherman? Because I said typically they tend to do careful adjustments in one direction rather than swinging the ship back around wildly. There have been examples of ships. I can't remember the specific changes to Sherman, but there have been examples to ships where we saw big changes. Iwami was one where we saw it take a bunch of changes. We saw San Diego lose HE entirely and become an AP and SAP ship. Those I consider to be large changes to the design. Canarius lost her reload or her magazine fire, kind of burst fire mechanic. So we certainly do see that from time to time. And that, I certainly don't mean to say that they never make wild changes. They do. So who knows what we'll see with Z42. There's still hope, for sure. Panavius says OP German boats are verboten. There's a lot of very powerful German boats. I think people like to point at German boats that got nerfed and say, hey, that's not cool. And then I'm like, I don't know, look at ZF6. It's freaking rad.
Have you played Schlieffen?
Have you played Schlieffen? It's amazing. That said, there are a lot of German boats, and we've got examples like Anhalt, which is not a very powerful boat and very likely could have been. And so there are a lot of German boats that have gotten hit with the verboten stick as well. So Panavius, I think you have a point there, but I think there's a lot of good examples too. And I'd hate for us to downplay some of those incredible boats, to just talk about Anhalt, because Anhalt's a lot less fun to talk about than Schlieffen, let me tell you.
Yeah. It came up on our Discord, Clyde's Discord, and we were talking about these nerfs as they were announced the other day. Yeah. And it was a simple conversation with one of the other members on there where we just kind of said, I'll just play Z52.
Yeah, just a casual decision was made.
It's okay. I'll just play Z52. Right? Yeah. Doesn't have as many guns, but it still has the hydros, and it's got torpedoes you can use, and I just play Z52. So yeah, exactly. And sometimes that happens. You see these ships get designed, or they're like, oh, it's going to be this ship for this crazy unique thing, and blah 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 blah. But then what really happens is when you go, if you look at COTS or you look at clan battles, most of the ships are tech lines. Something to be said for that. It's
pretty common that that's the case. Panavius says, I've played Schlieffen. She's fun, but situational. Yeah, she can't do everything, right? Not every boat can do everything. Grant Y also has a comment here. Grant, I don't know where you found this data so fast, but thank you. I have not validated this data. It could just be random nonsense. But Grant, I think, would do some research. So it says Sevastopol was 277 days between first announcement and release. And over the last 2.5 years, the median time was about 112 days. That's just shy of 4 months to you and me, give or take a week or 3. So yeah, if you add 120 days, you'll be pretty close. Thanks, Grant. But yeah, about 4 months makes sense. So, with this one getting announced about a month ago, it's likely to be here in three or 4 months, but you never know. We've got the Sev to point at as an example. Grant says, I keep a spreadsheet, not guaranteed to be correct. Thank you. And guys, that is everything I think that we have time to talk about. It's all the ships. We said something about each and every one of them. I hope you guys enjoyed hanging out with us and talking about steel ships today. Thank you very much for being a part of the conversation. All of you guys in chat, thanks for being here and watching. I'm gonna go back and play at least a game, maybe 2 games of World Warships. If Skada feels frisky, he'll join me. If he's got to go to sleep because he's got to go to work tomorrow, he won't. But yeah, we'll go back and wrap those things up. If you're watching this on YouTube later, thanks for watching on YouTube. And of course, you can join us for the live show and be an active participant in the conversation by joining us at twitch.tv/ClydePlaysLive. And we have a great time over there, and we stream 3 times a week. Some of them might even make sense for your time zone. We have a Saturday stream that works well for people in Europe, and our evening streams are only good for early risers in Europe and people in America. And then there's some crazies from all over the globe who join us because they're just night owls or whatever. But anyway, thanks very much, guys, for watching, whether it's YouTube or Twitch. And we are going to sign off here. So thanks very much. Skada, do you have any parting words for our wonderful audience today?
Thanks for having me. It's always fun to do this. Happy New Year, everybody. I don't think we'll do another one of these before then. And next time we do one of these in the rotation, I believe it will be for Research Bureau ships. Although we have been threatening to do a ship show where we just talk about super ships. But otherwise I'm out.
Yeah, cool, man. Yeah, it could be super ships. Probably the next one in the rotation would be Research Bureau ships. And it could be, we've been talking about dockyard ships too. Even though those are kind of unobtainium, that might be an interesting one to do. Anyway, with all that said, guys, thanks so much for watching. We're going to bounce back to the port here, and we'll catch you later. Have a good one.